secrets to you I'll tell, how the good old Union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Folks, we got a full show for you today, so we're not going to be able to open the phones, but you can send us a text, and we'll look at those during the program. You can send us a voicemail at any time, and we might play it on the next program, and that number is 844-899-8857. That is 844-899-TVLR. We already have some folks hanging out with us in the YouTube and Facebook chat. Appreciate that. Bingo Bango says, what's up? The Real Legend for Life says, let's go. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking to a local union president in Alabama, in Tuscaloosa, about what BFGoodrich is doing down there. Not good. We'll be talking to Jennifer Berkshire about public education. And then in the second half of the program, we're going to be talking to some organizers for the International Brotherhood of Teamsters about how they say their employer, the Teamsters, is busting their union. So lots of stuff to talk about today. The first thing that we want to talk about is a big Alabama story. You know, everybody listening knows that the Republicans run the state of Alabama. They have not been seriously contested outside of the sort of fluke Doug Jones win in 2017. And the Democrats are, you know, more or less irrelevant in the state. And so there is perennial discussion and debate and hand-wringing about how the Democrats within the Democratic Party, how they can make themselves more relevant. And we have a new entrance into that long line of debate. It's probably not actually a new entry. It's probably something that they've been saying all along, but it is, it's the first time that I've heard it said this sort of explicitly. And this was said by Alabama Senate Minority Leader Bobby Singleton as he is gearing up to run for chair of the Alabama Democratic Party. And according to him, quote, build a coalition, unquote, that can win and govern the state. In an interview with the Alabama Political Reporter, this was, he said, I'm quoting from the article here, one of the most distressing issues. So, wow, this is the thing that's really keeping Bobby Singleton up at night. One of the most distressing issues is keeping Bobby Singleton up, keeping the Democrats from winning, keeping the Democrats from developing a majority coalition in the state of Alabama, keeping the Democrats from being able to, presumably, if you want to govern the state, if you want to win higher office, presumably you want to do things to deliver for Alabamians. What is it, Adam, that you think is one of the most distressing issues?
Oh my, there's so many, but I'm really curious. What did he say?
He said that the Democrats have lost the support of businesses in the state of Alabama. And without the support of big business, the party doesn't have the funding to assist candidates with their campaign. Here's a quote from Singleton. It's hard to provide the messaging and proper training when you're lacking the funds to pay for it. That's one of the first goals for me. If I'm able to win, get out there and see what support I can garner from Alabama's business community. I feel like I'm going to have a stroke. I'm going to have an aneurysm live on the air, and I'm just going to go catatonic. What do you mean the biggest issue with Democrats is that not enough businesses support them? Like, that's just such a ridiculous idea for, like, the magic pill to create a relevant Democratic Party. I don't understand. I mean, well, I was going to say I don't understand. I'm not an idiot. I understand. I understand why, his power.
They have money. They want money.
Right.
I get it. And I respect Senator Singleton's work in the legislature. I genuinely do. But just as a point of clarification, the House Minority Leader, so the ranking Democrat in the state House of Representatives, Anthony Daniels, what was it, just in the last couple of years, was named a champion legislator for the Business Council of Alabama.
Yeah.
Now, the Business Council of Alabama is the coalition, the leading coalition of big business in the state.
It's the union of bosses in the state.
It is. And on that point, every single large union organizing campaign that happens in this state, the BCA is going to be right there running ads, running propaganda, engaging in all sorts of shenanigans to try to crush worker power, suppress worker voice. So, you know, when I hear this, that's strange to me. I mean, it doesn't seem to track with like the actual track record, because I don't think there is a problem with the Alabama Democratic Party being not pro-business enough. I'm not sure there's a demand for that. But
it's just so backwards. The reason that businesses don't invest in Democrats is because they're irrelevant. If you become relevant, then businesses will start knocking on your doors.
Right, because they want to go with who's going to win.
Exactly.
They want influence.
You're not going to get business support before you become relevant. That's just not the way that, I mean, maybe, you know, you can increase marginally, and maybe you can bring in enough business support to like hire a staffer to do some of the literally the most basic things a party can do. And, you know, I'm not even necessarily saying that if Singleton goes out and gets some business support and blah, 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 and, you know, that it wouldn't, I could see it. I could see a future where Singleton is the chair of the Democratic Party in the state of Alabama, and like the party as an organization and the candidates like are a step up from where they are now. But it's just not. It's not a strategy to develop a working class majority coalition. You have to. It's putting the cart before the horse.
Because we are let's just be clear, right? Working class people are the majority.
Right.
Business owners
are not
the majority.
Yes, the majority of Alabamians, guess what? Go to work for a living. We don't own businesses. We don't make money off of the money that we have. That's not how, like, 80% of Alabamians generate their income. It's just not. And so it's putting the cart before if you want business, you know, like, and I think really the thing is that you should, you know.
Is there an alternative?
Yeah, and maybe there's an alternative.
Bernie Sanders, he ran 2 campaigns for president with an average donation of $27. And I, of course, will never forget that, because he reminded us, you know, throughout 2 presidential cycles, right? But
there's an alternative.
We
can do something different.
Right.
A better world is possible, as people say. But even if like your plan is like, oh, I really got to get business support. The step one is not being nicey nice with the businesses. Step one is getting relevant. How do you become relevant? You become relevant by making the case to working class Alabamians that you are the people that have their best interests at heart and will govern in such a way to deliver for working class people, and in many instances, yes, that does mean over and against the interests of businesses. There are sometimes, yes, where the interests of working people and business owners are aligned, and, you know, we can,
and that's great.
And that's
Let's
great.
Take advantage of those win-wins.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's take advantage of the win-wins. But, you know, I mean, people are in a fighting mood. That's a huge reason. I mean, you know, I think there was maybe one other state that voted for Trump more than Alabama did. A big reason that people voted for Trump is because they want a fighter. And so to be seen as a fighter, guess what? You have to have enemies. And you have to be willing to say who on whose side you are on when there is a fight. And I believe that the way to do that in the state of Alabama is by demonstrating bona fides for support for working people. And it's not like this is unprecedented in the history of the state. I mean, look at probably the best governor in the state of Alabama's history, Jim Folsom. Jim Folsom did not become a 2-term governor because of the support of businesses in the state of Alabama. He became a 2-term governor with one of the, you know, and Jim Folsom, he was able to do all of this even as he was a debilitatingly drunk guy, like an alcoholic, and was constantly in a state of like sort of barely functioning. Even as he was doing that, he was able to pass some of the most progressive black lung legislation in the country. He was able to significantly increase road and infrastructure funding, increase pay for teachers, increase funding to higher education, etc., etc. He was able to deliver for working class people, and he was able to get working class people to support him because he named an enemy. The enemies were what he called the big mules. I mean, we don't really use that language anymore, but specifically like the banks, the power company, the lumber company, the big bosses. He named those as his enemy. And he developed a strong majoritarian coalition in the state of Alabama of black and white folks, working people in the north of the state, in the south of the state, in the middle of the state, that his opponents could not beat, that the big mules could not beat. And so instead of looking to our history in the state of Alabama, and even in the history of the country, there's not any leader that we think of in Alabama history or in American history who has been transformative, who has been who has really delivered in a way that has made the lives of working people better in this country, that we look to, and the way that they entered power is because businesses supported them. That's not the way that any transformative leader gets elected. That's not how it happens.
And I just want to say, transformation, that's what we need in Alabama, because if you look at the quality of life statistics, we rank at or near the bottom of everything good, at or near the top of everything bad. That is not a good place to be, right? That is shameful, because people in Alabama don't deserve any less than folks up north or out west or in other countries. We lack basic rights and benefits that dozens and dozens of other countries have had for granted for years, for generations. To be a working class person in the state of Alabama is to live in one of the worst environments for working class people in the developed world, particularly depending on your geography within Alabama, right? So there is a real need for true change, like big transformation in this state. And the last thing I'll say before we move on is that in 2022, our last big statewide election, 62% of Alabama voters did not participate, right? 1 in 4 Alabamians voted for Governor Kay Ivey. Yep. She won in a landslide, right? Yep. But that is worth noting. And we have to think about what is going to engage the masses of folks who are not participating for all kinds of reasons. Some you may agree with, some you may not. But the reality is less than 40% of Alabama's eligible voters, and there's a hell of a lot of people in Alabama not eligible, but less than 40% of eligible voters chose our state government. So there's real opportunity, and I think there's real potential here. But yeah, I'm not sure that courting businesses is the solution when the state is already dominated by big business. Yeah. That is part of the problem. So, again, respect his work. I am curious to know what will happen. The Alabama Democratic Party is having its meeting, exactly 1 week from today. It'll probably be a really messy knockdown, drag out between various feuding factions. But at the end of the day, working class people in this state deserve better representation. We deserve better from all of our politicians, all the political parties. We're not getting what we need. We deserve so much more.
As a champion for the working class, Jesse Jackson said, "Rocks laying on the ground." All the people who didn't vote.
That's right.
We've got our guest in the Zoom. Jim Knox is the president of the United Steelworkers Local 351 in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Brother Knox, welcome to the program. Thank you for taking the time.
No, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
I really appreciate you taking the time, and I know that you're very busy right now as a union official dealing with, I mean, some of the most difficult news that a union official can deal with. Honestly, I've known union officials in situations like this to sleep at the hall because people are coming up to them coming up to the hall at all hours of the night. So I don't know exactly if you're sleeping at the hall, but I know that you're working very hard, and so I really do appreciate you taking the time. Can you represent workers at the BFGoodrich plant in Tuscaloosa? Can you talk about what your members do?
The members actually build tires. We're a tire manufacturing company. We're in the rubber sector. So we are responsible for the majority of the KO3s and KM3s that you see on these tires. I mean, see on these vehicles.
And so, a few weeks ago, your members got devastating news that BFGoodrich says they will be closing this plant. What was the rationale that the company said why the justification for closing this plant that employs 1,100 people?
Well, we were corralled into a meeting that Thursday morning, and we were given the basically the company's explanation. So the explanation was that we're an aging factory, which is 80 years old, as well as market shares are down right now. So that was the thing that was told to us.
Hmm. And what do you make of that rationale?
I can see what they're saying as far as age of facility, but the thing is, when gas prices go up, tire sales go down. We have seen this pattern for years, and it's just falling into what we do as far as policy. We do a lot of import, export, and different things of that nature. So when you talk about adding tariffs to already nice expenses to tires, I mean, that plays a vital role into it as well.
Interesting. So you think that the tariffs have actually played a role in making it more difficult for the company to make a profit on the products that y'all produce?
Yes, no doubt about it. Like I said, we do a lot of import export. So we get a lot of our raw material from various different countries and everything. So that does play a role in it.
Wow. And so is that kind of the line that they've been sticking with? Market shares down, and this is an old plant, or has anything new come out in the weeks since the announcement as far as why they're closing?
That's the line that the company has stood on, and so that's their take on it. So.
Are they moving production to Mexico, or are they shipping it overseas, or what's going to be happening with the product that would have been produced here?
So as of now, what we're being told, we have a sister plant in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and they're going to take over the majority of the payload that we do day-to-day operations. They will take that over at the end of 2028.
Yeah, what's the timeline for the closure of this plant?
From what we're told, beginning of 2027, you should see some employees leaving, or mid 2027, but the total shutdown of the plant should be at the end of 2028.
I want to talk about some of what the union is doing in response to this, but really quickly, just on the subject of closures, there are a lot of people that are going to hear this and they're going to say, oh, well, that's what happens when workers unionize, and they're going to use this. And I saw it with another steelworker plant that closed back in 2019. It was the Goodyear plant, and so during the Mercedes campaign, there were a couple of state representatives that wrote op-eds saying, look at Goodyear, this is why workers at Mercedes shouldn't unionize. What do you have to say to people who try to make that argument?
I know a lot of people give the union a bad rap, but the union actually gives a voice to the workers, because in right to work state like we're in, they can come up and they can fire you for no probable cause just because they want to. So they give you a voice, and as well as the union makes sure that you have a safe working environment. That's one of the things, that principles that we stand on. We make sure that your pay is competitive, cost of living, as well as raises, bonuses, and different things of that nature. And we make sure that you have insurance to provide for your family. So the union is a great thing. And people, other people on the different sides say different things just to put out propaganda. But the union is the reason that we're actually having severance bargain with this company as well too. So
Right. That's a good thing to mention because, and I'm going to talk about a little bit of this in a moment, but, union and non-union companies both lay off workers. Like it's just something that happens sometimes. But in a non-union company, the employer or the company just says, like, we're laying you off and this is what we are or are not going to do. But in your case, y'all are in negotiations with the company over exactly how the process is going to play out, what the severance is going to be, etc. And you also have the support of the workers at the Fort Wayne plant, right? I mean, they're unionized too. And so implicitly there's like that cooperation there from the workers in Fort Wayne.
yes, we have them standing behind us as well. That will be the last unionized plant in the Michelin network. So they are standing strong with us as well, and we appreciate those brothers and sisters up north for doing that with us. So we really owe them a thank you. So I'll give it to them now. Thank you.
Like I said, it's worth noting that non-union companies lay off people as well. So far in 2026, I went and checked this before our interview. Alabama employers have filed 18 WARN notices. And so a WARN notice is something that federal law requires that if you're going to lay off more than 60 people or something, you have to give a certain number of months. I can't recall. I think it's 2 or 3 months notice.
It's 6 months. It's 6 months.
6 months
notice.
6 months
notice. WARN notices, yes.
And so there have been, so far in 2026, 18 WARN notices in the state of Alabama, not counting BFGoodrich, totaling 1,800 job losses. None of those were unionized. And so, and yet we will never hear the names of any of those companies. Like during, if workers at Mercedes decide to try to organize again and try to have another election, they're not going to hear from their leaders, oh, well, look at all these workers, these 1,800 workers at 18 other plants in the state of Alabama. They lost their jobs and they were non-union. And that's why you need to organize, actually. And, that's just nobody ever talks about that.
The reason that they don't talk about it is because they try to spin it the way that they want it spun. So
Right.
At the end of the day, the best thing for the workers at Mercedes is to unionize. I mean, it gives them a voice because at the end of the day, we know when we're coming to this factory, if we're working 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7, you're getting off at the time you're supposed to unless you opt to work overtime.
Right.
At Mercedes, from what I'm hearing, what I'm being told by some of the workers, you leave when that last car is done for the day. And you meet your production goal. So at the end of the day, you know your schedule. You know how you're based. This is things that the union gives you. They give you the right and they protect you with your rights. So different entities will try to spin this how they want it. But unionizing will be the best thing for the members at Mercedes.
Absolutely. And another thing, on that note, I talked about people trying to waive the Goodyear closure as a reason for Mercedes workers not to organize. I mean, I've talked to some of your brothers in the steelworkers, and something that I learned over the course of that campaign is that the only reason the Goodyear plant in Gadsden lasted as long as it did was because of the lobbying and the political work of the union in helping them kind of stay, getting some incentives and stuff from the state and I think the federal government. And that came because of the union's lobbying efforts. And so, unions can actually keep jobs here longer. And so, how are the steelworkers responding? What did the union start doing when BFGoodrich put out this notice?
So as soon as we were notified, of course, we talked to Roxanne Brown, who is our international president, as well as Daniel Flippo, that's our district director, and they have been boots on the ground. They have called, they have did everything that they possibly can to try to make this thing turn out in a better light. But at the end of the day, the company has said that, it's nothing that they could change. It's nothing that will be changed. They decided to shut it down, and that's just as well as our city officials. We talked to Congresswoman Terry Sewell. Everybody's doing their part, just trying to keep this factory because they have noticed that in Tuscaloosa, this is one of the higher paying jobs here. And as this job goes away, it doesn't just affect the membership, it affects Tuscaloosa, period,
right,
and well as surrounding counties. I mean, we have a lot of people coming in every day from different various counties just around here, and it affects everybody. So downstream, for every one job you lose at this factory, you'll probably lose 5 or 6 in the grand scheme of things around Tuscaloosa and around surrounding counties.
You know, you mentioned that the steelworkers have tried to pull in some local leadership, some city councilors, presumably the mayor. You mentioned Terry Sewell. Has there been any attempt to reach out to the White House and try to get the Trump administration moving against the closure? Because so far, even the intervention of Terry Sewell and some of the local leadership hasn't moved the company. But I imagine potentially if you get the White House, saying something about it, that could start to change. And I mean, you and I both know that I'm sure there are lots of Trump voters in your plant who think that the Trump administration wants to protect them and their jobs. Has there been any attempt to reach the administration on this?
Well, we actually went to Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago with the United Steelworkers Rapid Response. This is something that this is a tool that the United Steelworkers have to go and speak with the legislators and everything, the people that writes the bills and people that do all the good things and all the things that we live by. So we went up there and we actually went to try to talk to Katie Britt, and she was unavailable. So we have not, as far as I know, did anything other than that as far as trying to speak with Katie Britt. But it may be something that the international has done that I don't know about. But I don't think that step has been taken.
Well, if that happens, we'd love to hear about it because, I think if somebody asked the question of Trump, I think it would be difficult for him not to at least mouth the words in support of the plant. But, I don't know. He didn't do anything to save the Goodyear plant, and that was under his first term, too. So what are the steelworkers, what are y'all fighting for in the negotiations over these layoffs?
Well, the severance, we're looking for severance pay for the first thing, to try to let these families bridge the gap between finding employment elsewhere. So that severance will try to help them in the following weeks and months. Just trying to basically find your footing, because we don't know exactly where everybody will land. We don't know how they'll land. We don't know the ins and outs of anything as of yet. We're taking it one day at a time and we're playing it by ear. But just try to get severance package and just try to get some more answers to the question that the membership may have, as far as the ones that are able to retire, the ones that are able to transfer to Fort Wayne, if any. So it's just a lot of unanswered questions that we have.
Gotcha. And is there anything that listeners can do to support your members in Tuscaloosa?
I know we've had people reaching out to us as far as financial advisors, different USW employers. So it's just about, if you have any high paying, but any good paying jobs that can help sustain these members, please reach out to us and let us know that we can get them and get good members and good workers to you, so we can try to help them soften this blow as much as possible.
Brother Knox, again, really appreciate your time this morning. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with before we let you go?
I just appreciate you having us, and I just hope that everybody keeps us in your thoughts and prayers. I know that everybody takes things different ways, and we just don't know how this thing will end. So we hope that everybody can find their footing. And like I said, just keep us in your thoughts and prayers, because we're going through some difficult times at this moment.
Absolutely. We'll do that, brother. Am I going to see you at the COPE convention in Montgomery here in a couple of days?
Yes, you will. Yes,
okay.
You will.
Well, good deal. Well, I'll see you in a few days, and I'll be thinking about you and your members.
All right. Thank you for having me.
All right, brother. We just talked to President Jim Knox of the United Steelworkers Local 351, representing about 1,100 workers at BFGoodrich in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. They just got some terrible news, and the union is fighting to make sure that if the jobs cannot be saved, that the workers get a good severance. And that really is, it's something that is difficult to sort of make the case, I think, in a union campaign, but is very important, because whether you're union or not, your employer, there will be instances for some companies that you're going to get laid off. Mm-hmm. And they're able to bargain over how that happens, the timeline, what people are going to get, what people are going to get paid in
They
severance.
have to at least work through the union on some level. And that's an advantage.
The workers have some voice. And like I said, those 1,800 other workers in the state of Alabama, so far this year, in the first 8 months, they didn't get that. These workers are going to get that. We got a great show lined up for you today. We're going to be talking soon to Jennifer Berkshire about public education, and then we've got we got a Tommy Tupperville clip. I don't know if we'll have time for it, but it's another one of those things that's going to give me an aneurysm. So if you want to see that, make sure you stay tuned. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at AFGE.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Today on the program, we just talked to a union leader about his plant closing and how the union is responding. We'll soon be talking to Jennifer Berkshire about public education and more. If you'd like to send us a text, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also leave a voicemail at that number at any time or send us another note at tvlr.fm/contact. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, tvlr.fm, but we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. A huge portion of our funding comes directly from our listeners, so if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or make a one-time donation, you can go to tvlr.fm/donate or patreon.com/thevalleylaborreport. We've got a bunch of cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, if you're a member of a union, you should think about getting your local, your district council, or your international to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that.
Hey, good morning, y'all. Let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. And we want to welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, WMSP, WCPT, KTNF, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. We are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out at laborradionetwork.org. And as most of you know, we are not media professionals, just a few diehard unionists who want to amplify the voices of the working class. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or a first-time listener, we appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Every week in the South, workers organize new unions, they bargain for new contracts, they fight for good legislation and against bad legislation, and they put the boss in their place. These are some of the stories that we could find from July 17th to the 31st. Over the last week, 744 workers in 22 bargaining units have gone public with their union campaigns. 84 workers across 6 bargaining units withdrew their petition for a union election. Some 150 workers in a few bargaining units unionized, and 31 workers in 2 bargaining units voted against unionization. Here are the details. 325 workers at Caesars, a hotel and casino in New Orleans, Louisiana, filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Automobile Workers, UAW. 16 workers at Starbucks in Atlanta, Georgia, filed a petition to hold a union election with Starbucks Workers United, as did 16 more workers at a location in Conway, Arkansas. 57 workers at Carvana Logistics in Concord, North Carolina, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters, Local 71. 9 workers at Vestas in Greensboro, North Carolina, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters, Local 391. 40 workers at YMCA South Florida in Pembroke Pines, Florida, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters, Local 769. In election results, 137 workers at Swaybox Studios in New Orleans, Louisiana, voted 84-35 in favor of unionization with the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, IATSE. 59 workers at Via 313 Pizza Restaurant in Austin, Texas, voted 22-16 in favor of unionization with Restaurant Workers United, an independent union. 19 workers at Starbucks in Little Rock, Arkansas, voted against unionization with Starbucks Workers United, as did 12 workers at another Little Rock location, voting 0-10 against unionization. I think this is the first time I've ever seen 2 stores vote against unionization in 1 week. hopefully a blip and not a turning point in the union's momentum. 21 workers at Jacobus Energy in Peachtree Corners, Georgia, voted 15-2 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 728, and 10 workers at ABM Industry Groups in Louisville, Kentucky, voted 9-0 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 89. In grievances and unfair labor practices, the AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees, won another third-party arbitration case, with the arbitrator ruling that the Department of Health and Human Resources illegally fired 5,000 probationary employees. The arbitrator said that the department violated both the law and their collective bargaining agreement. The administration will be able to appeal the ruling, and we'll keep track of that. In strikes and bargaining updates, more than 700 workers at Virginia Commonwealth University, members of the Service Employees International Union, SEIU Local 32BJ, are fighting for their second contract, and they protest every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at Monroe Park in Virginia at 3:30 p.m. They're asking people in the area to go out and support their fight for a fair contract, so make it over there if you can. In political and legislative updates, the Republican-controlled House Committee on Education and the Workforce is trying to make it illegal for OSHA to create a heat standard for workers. That's right. Under the Biden administration, OSHA was trying to protect workers from the increasing heat deaths in the country by, and this is radical, this is super radical, saying that employers had to make sure that their employees had water, and if the temperature got above 90 degrees, they had to give them breaks every 2 hours. Really crazy stuff, and the Republicans caught it and said, no way, we can't have that. We're going to make it illegal to protect workers from the heat in the United States of America. It passed committee, and now it goes to the full House for a floor vote. In internal union affairs, longtime president of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME, Lee Saunders, is retiring. After 12 years as president, the New York Times has a piece covering his retirement. And the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, IUPAT, and the Labor's International Union of North America, LIUNA, signed a historic memorandum of understanding to cooperate on organizing new workplaces across the United States and Canada. This agreement is, as far as I can tell, the first of its kind among the building trades unions, and demonstrates a commitment between IUPAT and LIUNA to not just organize and build their own unions, but to work to build a stronger labor movement in the construction sector. We're going to be talking to Jennifer Berkshire. Do we already have her in the Zoom? We don't have her in the Zoom yet, but Adam, can you talk a little bit about the book that she wrote and why we wanted to get her on the program?
Sure, yeah. The book that just came out is called The Education Wars, A Citizen's Guide and Defense Manual. And so you could probably imagine from the title there that this is talking a little bit about the crisis affecting public education. We know that the culture war has really engulfed our public schools. There are extremist groups out there trying to ban books, trying to limit what educators can teach. They're really threatening the very foundations of public education. So Jennifer and her co-author, Jack Schneider, actually, dove into what's behind these efforts. Why are schools under attack like this? How can, and very importantly, how can the millions of Americans who actually love public schools and love their local public schools that their kids attend and their families attended, how can they fight back against these efforts? So I'm really excited about this conversation. I got a chance to chat with Jennifer a little bit last week, and she brings a great perspective. She's been covering these issues for years now, and she is really trying to dissect, this use of culture to dismantle a public institution. And one of the other things I know she's writing about and talking about with folks is making the working class case for public education. And I think that's really important. And, a trend that I've noticed lately with a lot of progressive candidates and DSA-backed candidates, left-wing candidates, however you want to characterize them. There's a lot of, more militant, progressive, upsurging candidates across the country, and they're talking about really important material issues like childcare, preschool, college, but public education is not getting maybe as much love and attention in some cases. And I wonder if some of that is maybe in some states, it's kind of taken for granted. Here in Alabama and in much of the South, we cannot take public education for granted. It has always been a battle. It, really grew out of Reconstruction and has been, a subject of political and cultural battle ever since, right? Because of segregation and privatization more recently. Which is really, spread throughout local districts from a state perspective, even from a federal perspective. I mean, right now, as we're talking, the Trump administration is pushing a budget that would have devastating cuts to federal educational programs. And while, most listeners may know that public schools are primarily funded through local and state taxes, those federal programs are really, really important, particularly for the most marginalized students, right? Students who are unhoused, students who are learning English as a second or maybe even third language, students who have special needs and disabilities. These federal programs are really important to supplement local and state revenues and funding sources, and also important to bring equity and accountability, which is under attack as well. That's something we're seeing from D.C. and here in Alabama. We have certainly seen public education under attack throughout, my career. I started teaching in 2012. That's where I got my start. And at that time, the state had slashed the budgets. We had some of the deepest cuts to public education in the nation in the aftermath of the Great Recession. The Republicans took over the state government in 2010. And, the very next legislative session in 2011, they went after tenure, watered that down, weakened it significantly. They went after dues deduction for AEA, the Alabama Education Association, which is the state affiliate of the NEA, the National Education Association, the largest teachers union in the country. They went after the retirement system, right? They created 2 tiers. We hear about that a lot in manufacturing. We hear about that with the Teamsters and UPS, right? But public sector workers have also been exposed to tiers. And here in Alabama, we have a 2-tiered retirement pension. We have a great retirement pension system that has been very successful for a very long time. But again, in the midst of all these cuts, amidst all these attacks, there was a new retirement system created for newer employees, right? So if you started teaching after 2012, you actually get a weaker benefit. You have to teach for much longer and you're going to collect less money. And that's just one example of many in the ways that privatization has spread throughout the state, throughout the South, and the way it's, obviously connected to culture and to race. So yeah, important book that Jennifer has. Really excited to talk about it and excited for folks to check it out. It's called The Education Wars, A Citizen's Guide and Defense Manual. And I think we have Jennifer on the line now.
I'm right here.
All right. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us this morning.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I should tell you that way back in the day, I once hosted a labor show on a community radio station. It was in Central Illinois, and our listening audience was, well, in the single digits. And my dad was one of our most devoted listeners, but this was kind of before the internet. And so he would call in, but he couldn't really hear the show. And so his questions tended to be wildly off topic.
Well, that sounds like a good community radio program. We're on the radio now in Chicago as well, so not exactly Central Illinois, but still in the same state. So maybe some of the people that heard your community program a while back are listening to this.
Yeah, that's so cool, Jennifer. I really appreciate you sharing that. And before we dive into it today, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you interested and started in exploring public education.
Yeah, so I didn't really know much about public education except that I had experienced a lot of it. And then I ended up getting a job with one of our statewide teachers unions here in Massachusetts, the American Federation of Teachers. And it was at a time when there was a lot of energy around reforming the schools. And here in Massachusetts, which is a very blue state, that meant that it was led by Democrats. But I noticed that they were using a lot of the same rhetoric that I was familiar with, having come from the Midwest, where attacks on labor unions were from the right. And that got me really interested. How was it that the people were basically making the same argument that kids would be better off if their teachers had fewer rights? And I thought, wow, this seems like a really strange argument to make. I want to know more about where this came from. And that really set me on my path.
Yeah, it is a baffling concept to put that out there to the public, and obviously it's couched in so many different forms of rhetoric and statistics and you name it. But as you eloquently put it, it's bottom line, you want worse for educators, and you think that will result in better results for students. And to your point, it was something that we saw with both parties, especially, during the Obama years. It was really big, standardized testing, all of that. And now we've entered this kind of new phase that you're writing about in your latest book. And you talk about this like massive coordinated attack on public education. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners are familiar with the fights over book bans, the fights over diversity, equity, and inclusion, probably seen some of these screaming matches at school boards on the news. So how do you explain what is like really driving this obsession with public schools? Is it really about culture, or what else is going on here?
No, it really isn't. And I think, a big part of why we wrote the book was just that if you were like a regular person who sent your kids to the local public school, it was really confusing to suddenly be hearing all these wild claims that, there were litter boxes in the schools, or, that your teachers were they were spending all their time trying to indoctrinate your kids into critical race theory. And what became immediately apparent was that these were actually, national claims, that these were very coordinated. And so then it was sort of like, well, what's the point of all of this? And I think we've really seen what the point is over the past few years, that there has been this dramatic expansion of vouchers, particularly through red states and particularly in the South. And that these aren't the programs that, we were used to hearing about, the programs that popped up in the wake of the civil rights movement, where, states would incentivize white families to leave the public schools. These are universal vouchers, meaning that they're open to anyone, no matter how wealthy the family is. And what's so interesting about this, the dramatic spread, is that nobody in these states has gotten to vote on these programs, because when they do, they vote them down, just like they have repeatedly for something like 50 years. And so in 2024, when voters in Nebraska and Kentucky got the choice to weigh in on whether they wanted vouchers, they voted 65% to 35% against. And this included, really the reddest parts of those states, which I thought was so interesting, that you would have, a little county in Kentucky where people would go to the polls and something like 80% pulled the lever for Donald Trump. And then even more of them voted against vouchers. And so this to me tells me that the politics of this issue are not just more complicated than what we're used to hearing, but actually like wildly at odds with the reality on the ground.
Yeah, and I really, that resonates with my experience organizing here in Alabama around public education, where, I found myself in rooms that were incredibly diverse, politically, racially, You name it. I mean, folks who often don't agree on a lot, but could find common ground when it came to public schools, when it comes to, just supporting what families and students need, the kind of resources they need, the respect and dignity of the employees involved. There seems to be some potential for common ground, which I think also speaks to why it is such a target, right? The ability, public schools really do bring together diverse groups of folks across neighborhoods, and in some ways, it is a model for the United States in that it does accept all students, right? Whether they can speak English, whether they have a parent who loves them and takes care of them, whether they even have a home. Those kids are allowed in public schools. And so there's something special about that. And I think that's part of this targeting as well. But you mentioned vouchers, and I want to dig in on that because we do have a voucher system here in Alabama. It's called the Choose Act. Builds on something previously called the Alabama Accountability Act, which was a private school scholarship program / tax break for rich folks to donate to private school scholarships, right? But you really looked at the actual math and the financial impact on public education. So could you just tell us a little bit about what does happen to these local schools, especially some of these rural and like more working class public schools? What happens to these when these vouchers get implemented?
Well, let's just zoom out a little bit and think about where we are right now. So, the buzzword of the moment is affordability, right? Not a surprise at all. Prices keep going up. Gas is really expensive. And so when you think about vouchers as a policy, they really couldn't be any worse suited to the moment. Who loves them most of all in the whole world? A handful of billionaires, people like Betsy DeVos or Jeff Yass, who is the wealthiest person in Pennsylvania. They have absolutely flooded these states with cash in order to get these voucher programs enacted. Right now in Florida, for example, you have two different billionaires, Ken Griffin and Jeff Yass, who I just mentioned, who have been, they've given something like $20 million between the two of them to try to buy the governor's race there. Why? Because the Republican candidate is, won a big waiver of the education freedom flag. And so people look at this stuff and they think, wow, we hate billionaires. Why is it that they're so keen on this cause? And the cause turns out to be absolutely terrible for, working class communities that depend on public schools. And that's really because these universal programs are a remarkably efficient way of moving resources out of these communities and into the hands of more affluent communities. And anyone can look up the research here, right? That we can look state by state that when a program goes universal, meaning any kind of income cap is removed and any family, no matter how wealthy, is eligible to have the state pick up the tab for the private school tuition that they were previously paying. They jump to get their hands on that benefit. And it means that within a few years, you start to see voucher programs being disproportionately used by wealthy families and by wealthy communities. And that means that there are fewer resources available for, the kids who you just described, for whom the school is at the very center of their community. Rural schools are hit particularly hard. And now what we're seeing in states like West Virginia, for example, or Arizona, is that as these voucher programs get bigger and bigger, like more than $1 billion here, $500 million here, is that they're starting to encroach not just on public school spending, but on the state's ability to provide all kinds of benefits and services to the public. And so, before long, legislators are being asked to pick, right? Like, are we going to continue to fund this voucher program that benefits our wealthy constituents? Or we're going to have to get rid of some other things that we care about? Like, for example, improving water systems in Arizona, or supporting kids in the West Virginia schools who can't afford clothes, for example. So it's a really stark trade-off, and I think you can quickly see why these programs are so unpopular when people get a sense of how damaging they are to the public schools so many people depend on.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, especially just the fact that these are choices that are being made, and in many cases, lawmakers are choosing to subsidize rich folks' private school education over the real material needs of our communities. And something that has always struck me about this dynamic is that, in many ways, these political and cultural attacks are meant to drive up the demand for the vouchers. Right? We tell everyone the public schools are failing. We tell everyone the public schools are indoctrinating your kids. They're, violating your sacred values. And so suddenly you're in the market. You're interested in alternatives to public schools because you've been propagandized to really believe that. And so you're looking for something now through this artificially induced demand, and they have the solution, of course, through the privatization, through the voucher programs. And something else that I think is worth noting is that public schools aren't perfect. Lord knows they're certainly not perfect here in Alabama. Public schools have a lot of work to do to really equitably and honestly serve every single child and every family that we're supposed to serve. But, there again, like to your earlier point about how does it help kids to make things worse for teachers, how does it help the public school system to defund it, right, or to target it politically? And I'll segue here because we are a labor show, and so we think about public education and public schools also as a workplace. And in many counties, the public school system is one of the largest employers. In many areas, it's one of the better employers, frankly. And so, the teachers, the cafeteria workers, and support staff, they're all facing a huge amount of stress, not just from the financial budget aspect, but, because of these cultural attacks and political attacks on teaching honest history, or, trying to monitor what goes on in these classrooms, and the deprofessionalization of education, both through these attacks and spread of technology and other factors. So could you talk a little bit about how these political and cultural attacks impact education as a workplace, and how that's really impacting the workers in our schools?
Many years ago, I interviewed a political economist named Gordon Lafer. I don't know if you know him. He'd be a great person to have on your show. And at the time, it was one of the most depressing interviews I'd ever done. But I keep going back to it because I really feel like he understood what was happening in a way that a lot of us are just starting to grasp now. And think about it. If you are an employer whose goal is to pay people as little as possible, whose goal is to make things like unemployment insurance as skimpy as possible, whose goal is really to lower people's expectations about what they deserve and what their kids are entitled to, then for you, the existence of a school district, like you were just describing, that's actually a decent employer is a big problem, because you've got all these folks, many of whom are unionized. And so they're able to band together and demand higher wages. They're able to, pressure their employer about working conditions. And that often, especially in places that you were just describing, where the school district is the largest employer and the best employer, that then has the effect of raising the standard and the expectations really county-wide, right? Because if you're a sort of low-road employer who wants to treat your employees really badly, that employee can look across the street and say, why do I have to put up with this? I could go get a job at the local school district and I'll be treated much better. I'll have rights on the job. I'll make better wages. I'm going to get a health insurance plan, maybe a retirement plan. And so you can start to see why schools would be such a target as a labor issue. And I think we're really about to see this heat up when it comes to AI and technology. There was a story that I'm betting some of your listeners heard earlier this summer, where upper state New York district, rural district, was going to start the school year introducing kids to a robot named Sally. Did you hear about this story?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, so Sally, this is a kind of a weird story because the company that made Sally is also related to a company that makes sex dolls. We won't get into that, but Sally was sort of weirdly human looking, and then her role was to, sit in the classroom and quote unquote assist the teacher, and the students would go and introduce themselves to Sally and identify themselves with a number specific to them. Well, Sally was going to cost close to $60,000. And so the teachers and the employees at the school district recognized immediately that this was a labor issue, that, like that money could have been invested in human labor. And instead, the district was choosing to spend it on a robot. There was a huge backlash. But I think you can really start to see how the goal of driving labor costs down, but also lowering people's expectations of what they're entitled to. You can see how AI is going to just drive right into that.
Yeah, I am so glad you brought that up because that's very much been on my mind. Something else I wanted to make sure I got your perspective on is this concept of parents' rights. We hear about it a lot. It's often, infused with a religious argument frequently. At least that's how I've experienced it down here in the South. But you make a point to talk about the rights of, students, the rights of taxpayers, and there's sort of this dynamic between parents' rights and the common good, right? And I'm curious what you think about how we can challenge this like really highly individualized consumer model of education and remind folks that like public schools are for the public good and we all have a stake in that.
So on the one hand, I'd say that the news on the parents' rights front, if you worry about the sorts of things that you just laid out, the news has been pretty bad. There's been one Supreme Court case after another that has vastly expanded the ability of individual parents to challenge schools on religious grounds, which is just going to make the work of educating a community of kids that much more challenging. But I think that what's interesting is that the political backlash to this very narrow view just keeps intensifying. That, like people immediately understand that the person who shows up at the school board meeting demanding the removal of a book, for example, they're like that view, that definition of parents' rights has proven to be absolutely toxic at the poll. And people are always surprised when I tell them that, something like 3/4 of school board candidates who've run on a parents' rights platform have lost over the last few years. And we see this playing out just as dramatically in other state level races. So I spent much of the summer interviewing Democrats who ran for state legislative seats and flipped Republican seats. And one thing that I found that was so interesting was that they talked about education in just the way you were describing, as a collective economic good. And I'm going to pause here and let you ask another question because there's a train going by.
Well, yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think that is at the heart of it is this, idea of individualism versus the collective good. And so much of it really, boils down to that. But the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is the fact that, well, you called this book a citizen's guide and defense manual, right? So it's not just talking about the problems. It's also meant to inspire and give us some guide to action. So for those listening, whether you're rank and file union member or a parent or just, any regular old folks here listening to this and you care about your local public schools, what does winning look like, and what are some of the ways that communities have been able to fight back?
First thing is people should absolutely listen to this show, and they should really start to try to understand how school and the attacks on public education is connected to all the other issues that they're so upset about right now, right? That people are so concerned about the cost of living. People feel like the system is rigged, and that if you're a wealthy person in this country, that the rules don't apply to you. And so I think having an understanding that the same folks who you're angry about for things, when you rage against the billionaires, that they're driving so many of the attacks on public education, I think connecting the dots is really important. We have a famously decentralized school system in this country. It's one of the reasons why the attempts to blame all of our various education related challenges on the federal Department of Education are almost, kind of funny in a funny, not funny way. But it means that people who are involved in any kind of education fight often feel really disconnected, even from the town next door. And so I think that anything that we can do to connect people in a kind of a common understanding that we're all in this together. So I happen to know, Adam, that you've got an exciting project coming up, and I believe it's got the words Public School Strong in the name. Are you going to tell us anything about that?
Oh, yeah. Well, great segue there. Great assist there. Yeah, we are working on Public School Strong here in Alabama. It's a national campaign, started in North Carolina, spread to Tennessee and throughout the country now. And it's really just a grassroots mobilization of parents, community members, rank and file educators, students, people who care about public education, who see that the other side is organizing and that we have to organize as well. And to your point, I think it's so important we connect the dots of our analysis. We are clear-eyed about who and what is behind this, what their motives are, and how it really impacts us, and bring people together around that shared analysis, connect the people across communities and neighborhoods, like you said. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on today and for all the work that you do. How can listeners follow your work, and is there anything else you want to make sure you plug today?
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Have You Heard that comes out every 2 weeks, a little less frequently during the summer months. I report regularly on education related issues. I have a big story coming out in a magazine called The New Republic in September about the winning messages that Democrats are running on when it comes to talking about public schools. And finally, I have a Substack newsletter called The Education Wars. If you just look me up, you'll find it.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much. Really enjoyed this conversation. Look forward to sharing this with my education friends all over as soon as we get this up on YouTube. And yeah, thank you for all you do. And definitely don't be a stranger. We'd love to talk to you again.
Anytime. Thanks so much for having me on the Valley Labor Report.
We really appreciate you taking the time. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. If you want a good-paying union job in construction or nuclear plant maintenance in North Alabama, then you need to talk to the Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366. They're recruiting for jobs right now, so if you're interested, please apply online at liunalocal366.com or call their hiring hall at 256-383-2466. That's 256-383-2466. No experience is needed, and we offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs and benefits is our mission. Live better, work union. Local 366. Feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communication system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you're listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate y'all tuning in. We got a great second half of the show lined up for you today. At 11:45, we're going to be talking to a couple of organizers for the Teamsters International about their fight for a staff union. But first, Adam has a couple of plugs, I think, don't you? Or do we just want to jump into the segment?
Oh, sure. I can go ahead and give a couple plugs before we talk about our illustrious senator. Labor Notes has some good trainings coming up. You probably just missed Secrets of a Successful Organizer. It was this past week. It was something we put out. I hope you attended. If not, they will do it again. Always check labornotes.org/events. As we mentioned earlier with the interview with Jennifer, I will be hosting a virtual kickoff of Public School Strong Alabama on August 4th. That'll be at 6 o'clock. You can go to alarise.org, find out more, to register. Really excited about that. And also want to make sure folks know that on Friday, September 11th at Auburn University, North Alabama Area Labor Council is really excited to be partnering with the Center for Humanities there on the Advancing Alabama Labor History Symposium with the keynote speaker, Dr. Robin D.G. Kelly. It's going to be a great time. We're going to have opportunities for folks to bring their union swag. If you have any kind of labor history paraphernalia, old buttons and pens and T-shirts, posters, anything like that you want to show off, some cool artifacts, that would be really fun. But yeah, we're going to have some great panels. people from archives, people from universities. Really a great time. So check that out. That's Friday, September 11th. And again, Public School Strong virtual kickoff will be Tuesday, August 4th. So check that out.
Tommy Tuberville, U.S. Senator from the state of Alabama, on a campaign to make life worse for working people in the country, attacking Social Security last week. Let's just jump into it. Let's play clip 1.
For decades now, the American people have paid into Social Security each month without having any idea if they will ever see a cent of the money that they put in. Since being signed into law in 1935, by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, our great president, Americans' money has been going in the front door of the federal government and then going right out the back door.
Okay, let's pause it right there for a second because, I mean, it's very funny hearing a Republican who would oppose every single aspect of the New Deal, calling FDR a great president. And I think, going back to
Maybe that was sarcasm.
I don't know. I mean, everybody likes FDR. Like, unironically, I mean, people talk about FDR was a great president.
He did win World War II, right?
He won
Theoretically,
World War II.
That gives him some street cred with the conservatives. You would hope.
Yeah. Every good thing that the government does came out of the New Deal, basically. And so,
Which also, let's not forget, only came because working people organized and fought for it and bled for it and died for it and demanded it, right?
And that, it's potentially a lesson for the, the person who would like to be chair of the Alabama Democratic Party, in the value of, a pro-worker majoritarian politics, because if you do that and you deliver something as transformational as the New Deal, then even 100 years later, the conservatives will not be able to attack it because, it's so popular. So he can't just literally come out and say, it's it was the worst thing ever. He's got to say, it was kind of implemented badly. And so he's talking about people. He opened by saying people don't understand that money went in the front door and out the back door. And that's just because, politicians have, painted this picture of Social Security as an individual retirement account. And it's not that. It is a social insurance program. It's just like an auto insurance program. It would be, people saying, oh, the money's coming in the front door, you're paying it, and then it's going out immediately to some retiree. And that's exactly how, guess what? All insurance works. That's how all pensions work. That's how, that's how it works. Like, I pay an auto insurance premium, and somebody else gets paid out when they get a car accident, and then when I send that money in, it doesn't just sit in an account for me
waiting
to
on
access
you to
later.
have an accident, right?
And if you think about it for more than like 3 seconds, how could it have ever been that way? Because the people who first got Social Security when it was enacted, they did not pay into it, right? It was the workers at the time when Social Security was enacted who paid in, and the money immediately went out the front door to the retirees who were retirees at that time. And that's how it's always worked, because it's not an individual retirement account. It is a social insurance program that has brought elderly people in old folks in the United States, one of the most successful programs in American history. And yes, it's a social insurance program that is supposed to guarantee benefits for you as you age and you can no longer work.
Right. Or as you experience disability and cannot work, right? Because as a society, most of us would agree that it is better that folks who are disabled or folks who are elderly be able to eat and survive and
Hot
live
take.
life.
Radicals here on the Valley Labor Report.
I know. I just keep loving people.
Yep.
What am I doing?
All right, let's continue.
Your dollar doesn't grow, and it doesn't come back to you or your children. It's a big, gigantic, blown-up Ponzi scheme. And the last time I looked, people who do Ponzi schemes usually go to jail. Every American is forced to participate in it. You got no choice. You don't have a say of the matter. Whether you're 17 or 67, more than 6% of your paycheck is taken out by the federal government to pay for Social Security, your so-called retirement. That might not seem like a lot, but to million Americans struggling to live paycheck to paycheck, that 6% is a huge sacrifice. Americans have been paying into this program.
For a second.
Now, I'm just curious. Does Tommy Tuberville remember what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck?
Probably not. No.
Because let's just remember that this is a guy who is very wealthy because he coached athletes.
Yep. For public school.
Playing a ball game. Right? He coached them. They actually went out on the field and got hurt and put their bodies on the line. He grew very wealthy from this activity. He propelled his fame and wealth into being our United States Senator. And I don't know. It just kind of rubs me the wrong way to hear him talk about ordinary Americans struggling to live paycheck to paycheck when this brother said that he doesn't get paid enough as a senator.
Yes, doesn't
that
get paid
he must be allowed to do sketchy trades.
Yes.
I'll just leave it at that. Sketchy trades. That's what he wants the ability to do because, apparently the 6-figure salary and wonderful benefits that he has as a United States Senator is not enough for him.
And he's talking about people living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, he makes more money from his pension from Auburn than most working people, than the median working person in the state of Alabama. He gets more money from his pension than the average worker. And that's obviously on top of the millions of dollars that he made. That's on top of the $5 million that he got paid to quit at Auburn. And that's on top of the 6-figure salary that he gets for being a senator. But if we ban stock trading among Congress people, he wouldn't want to do it. That's what he said.
Well, I'll say this right now. Tommy Tuberville, if you give me $5 million, I'd be willing to quit this show.
There you go.
That's challenge on the table.
Let's continue.
For years, only to see a fraction of what they have been promised. It really makes you wonder how
Let's
this
pause it right there. And I also just want to say, 6% for people paycheck to paycheck. It's frustrating to hear that. And we'll talk about his solution here in a second, and the solution not be, well, we should tax richer people more, instead of like poor people. But the Social Security program does not have to only pay out a fraction of what it is promising. Right? It has never not delivered so far in its 90-year history, and it doesn't have to. We'll talk about how we can make that happen in a moment.
Government-approved Ponzi scheme is legal. The truth is that this retirement savings, this savings program is 100% broke. It's absolutely broke.
100% broke?
Just like our federal government of $40 trillion in debt. The Social Security Fund is projected to run out of its reserve money in 2032, just a few years from now. When these funds are depleted, senior citizens could see a cut in their monthly check up to 22 to 25% of their benefits. On average, that's $500 a month. If the federal government were to try and save the program, it would most likely mean that your taxes would skyrocket.
Okay, well, let's just cut it there because we're getting close to time. But, just completely ridiculous. Lying. The way to save the program is not actually by raising taxes on the majority of people.
Or cutting the benefits of
Or
everyday
cutting
people.
the benefits. We can look at Bernie Sanders' plan. And, maybe some people hear Bernie Sanders and say, oh, it's radical. That's going to raise taxes on everybody. Look at his plan. His plan right now, people don't know this. People don't know that once you hit $170,000, you stop paying into Social Security. That means every single person that makes less per year than $170,000, you pay more into Social Security as a percentage of your income than somebody like Elon Musk or
Right,
Jeff
Tuberville
Bezos.
is talking about paying 6%.
Or Tommy Tuberville.
When's the last time 6% of his,
Exactly.
check was coming out? Come on now.
Exactly. The way to do that, the way to save the Social Security program is to eliminate the cap. Say you got to pay the same percentage on your income as all other working people if you're a wealthy person. And if you do that, the program will be solvent for basically ever, for like another 100 years. And you can keep it solvent for another 100 years while increasing benefits, not by cutting benefits, but increasing benefits by like $1,000 a month. So you get to increase benefits. Everybody pays the same tax. It's just a flat tax. The conservatives are supposed to love flat taxes. And it's solvent for like 100 years. That's not a radical proposal, but that's something that Tommy Tuberville doesn't want you to know. Instead, his proposal is to try to privatize Social Security, push it into the market. And I just talked to somebody this week who their retirement account got up to $700,000 before 2008. It went down during 2008 to $70,000. They got spooked and took it out, and they lost basically their entire retirement savings. That's what would happen to people if we allowed Social Security to be privatized, and that's what he wants to do. That's his solution. That's it for the show today, folks. Find us on Facebook, YouTube, The Valley Labor Report, to continue listening to the show. If you don't do that, we appreciate your time, and we'll see you next week. All right, we're off the radio now. But yeah, I mean, last thoughts on that is like, seriously, I mean, that just blew me away. That, you know, I talked to, and this is what would happen to people's Social Security without a doubt. If we allowed people to treat Social Security as if it was an individual retirement account, then the very next time the stock market dropped, some non-trivial portion of people would get the shit scared out of them.
They get wiped out, man.
And they would pull it out of their account, and they lose everything. Just like happened to this guy that I was talking to this week during 2008.
And imagine the grifting.
Yes.
The fraud.
Yes.
The abuse. I mean, folks who are suffering with disabilities or folks who are elderly are already subject to so many scams, to so much fraud, right? You know, you hear about it all the time. Folks calling your grandma and trying to get her to send money in Bitcoin and stuff like that. Can you imagine if we did away with Social Security and everyone is just totally on their own? How much exploitation, how much abuse would come from that?
Yes.
How many people would get sold up the river? How many people would lose due to bad advisors, bad investments, on and on and on. Again, as a society in the 1930s, folks looked around and said, you know what, maybe it's not great for this country if elderly and disabled people are on the streets, destitute.
And that's what would happen too.
Are like the whole family's having to band together to try to take care of the least of these, without any sort of support from the society, even though all wealth is a social product. We all collectively contribute to the wealth of this country, the richest country in the history of the world. It's pretty rich coming from Tommy Tuberville, a man who has not worked a regular job paying 6% in Social Security taxes in quite some time. And I'm not sure just how in touch he is with the everyday people's experience.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. And you mentioned the we don't want old people being in the streets. And that's what would happen because, the first thing that we were talking about is what would happen to young people if we allowed them to put all of their Social Security into treat it like their own personal retirement account. So it would screw them over. It would screw a very, very non-trivial portion of them over. And then when they got old, they would be out on the street. But it would also, if you do that to the program, it would destroy the program for people who are retired right now. They're talking about, it's going to go bankrupt in 2032, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you take out the people who are paying into it right now, guess what? It's going to go bankrupt before 2032. It'll go bankrupt like 3 weeks ago. If you do, it's just so stupid. Well, it's not stupid. It's evil and wicked because either he knows that that's what would happen and he doesn't care, or he is really stupid and the evil people are the ones whispering in his ear about this kind of stuff. I'm not really sure. He may just be stupid. I think he's probably the stupidest senator.
That's what they say. Many people are saying
Many people are saying Tommy Tuberville, stupidest senator. But It would be bad. It would be very bad if we privatize Social Security. And that's the reason that he is one of the only Republicans that's willing to go out on this limb and push for something like this.
And put it on a big sign.
And put it on a big sign, because even Republicans realize...
They may want to do it, but they're not going to say that out loud.
No, they can't do that. I mean, just totally ridiculous. All right, we're going to take our break, and then we're going to go into overtime. Stay tuned, folks.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell. Go to Harlan County, there is no neutral there. You'll either be a union man or a thug party age player. Which side are you on? 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 Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on? 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 Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell. Go to Harlan County, there is no neutral there. You'll either be a union man or a thug party age player. Which side are you on? 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 Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you on?
Folks, This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, now broadcasting across the Mason-Dixon line in Chicago and Minneapolis. Brought to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley in the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. We got a tweet last week. Somebody tweeted at us, said, I'm part of our first contract bargaining committee and negotiations happen in October. Any material I should check out on the process or any bargaining tips? Adam, you just negotiated your first union contract with the employee. You've been in unions for a long time, and so but you've been at this workplace you're at for less long. You were part of the organizing campaign, and then you were on the bargaining committee. So you just bargained a first union contract. What would you have to say to this listener?
Yeah, well, first of all, congratulations.
Yes.
Congratulations for making it this far. And I also want to say, thank you for recognizing where you're at in this process, right? Because what is it, about half of workers who win a union do not win a first contract. Okay, so that's really important to just set the stakes out right out from the gate here, that it is always going to be a challenge. Now, not knowing the workplace, not knowing the dynamics, it may vary. I was in a very blessed position. My first contract negotiations that I'm referencing was for a progressive nonprofit. The employer was very collaborative. It was a different kind of dynamic than most of the workplace struggles I've been involved with. But some of the fundamentals are, of course, the same. And so it is a big honor to be on the bargaining committee. It is also a really heavy lift. It's a lot of work. So, again, I commend you for that. It's really important that you know what you want. It is a negotiation. You're not going to get everything you want, but you do need to know what you want. And when I say you, I'm talking about the unit, right? Not you personally. It's not really about what you personally want to see in the contract. It is about what's best for the unit. And so hopefully by the time you've started negotiations, you've done some really good research and collection of data from your membership. Some unions use bargaining surveys. Some have like a bargaining input form or, things like that. Whatever the system is that you use, just be sure that you really are inviting and gathering input from the membership, from the bargaining unit itself. So that's really important, because no, you're not going to get everything you want, but you at least need to know what that is that you really want, because that will help you understand where you can make some negotiations, where you're willing to concede in some areas and where you're not. So that's all helpful. The pre-bargaining is very, very important. Not just from the bargaining units getting their perspective, their input on the process, what they want to see in terms of proposals, but just getting your ducks in a row, getting up to speed on anything you need to know in terms of the dynamics. Who will be at the table, right? On your side and their side. Knowing a little bit about that process and the individuals involved will be very helpful. So, it's important to know that the boss's main strategy for first contracts is typically to stall and to exhaust the union. They want workers to lose momentum, right? They want you to get frustrated. They want people to think, oh, well, we voted for a union and here it is. Nothing's changed. Years, a year later, months later. But, the contract is not won by a handful of smart people in a room. It's won really by the active participation of the membership. So remember that. The power is in the shop floor. It's not at the bargaining table. You cannot think you're just going to walk in there and out-argue the boss's high-priced lawyers with logic alone. Your leverage comes from that collective action. And the employer will have a good sense of just how much collective strength you really have. So keep your membership informed during the process. Again, This varies by union. It varies by contract negotiations. Some are very tight-lipped. Some are very open. But to the extent that you and your brothers and sisters are able to come up with a way to keep folks informed and engaged throughout the process, do some unity actions, right? Everyone wear a union shirt on bargaining day, or a sticker day, or button day. Any sort of activities you can find to really flex your collective muscles, use those as structure tests, right? Like who's participating, who's not, who's helping, who's not. But those things are important to show management that you do have the backing of the membership, because just as they often want to exhaust you and frustrate you and delay, they also want to divide. Division is really important for management. So any ways they can drive divisions within the bargaining committee itself, or divide the bargaining team from the broader unit. Management loves secrecy. That's why typically a lot of unions have been more interested lately, I think, in open bargaining. Again, it still varies. That's a decision y'all have to make. But that is an option on the table. Some form of open bargaining where you can really invite members to participate in a more active way, or at least a more transparent way. Management is also going to demand the no strike clause. Just go ahead and accept that that's going to be passed. And I would say think carefully about how easily you give that away. Yes, it's pretty standard contract language, but your right to withhold your labor is your ultimate leverage. So don't give that away easily. And get just cause and grievance procedures locked in pretty early if you can, because everyone loves to talk about wages and healthcare, but ultimately one of the most important things you can do through the power of a union contract is protect your members from arbitrary discipline and firings, right? They have to be employed to get those wages and those benefits. So those sorts of protections are very, very important. It's one of the most fundamental advances you make by getting a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement. So those are important. Don't just react to the boss's proposals. Please do think about the proposals that you can pass. Force them to respond to your vision of the workplace, right? So those were some things that I learned. I do want to mention a few resources that I think are practical and helpful. I know you hear us say it all the time. Labor Notes is a great resource, but it really, really is. Now, secrets of a successful organizer may not be the first thing that comes to your mind when you're going into bargaining, but there are some excellent sections about mapping the workplace and building the pressure you need to win a contract that could be helpful for you to understand, even if you are tied up in negotiations and you're not necessarily the person doing some of that organizing. Understanding that the contract campaign is a campaign, right? Labor Notes also has a great book, Democracy is Power, Rebuilding Unions from the Bottom Up. That's a great one. There's also a lot of good articles on their website as well. Tips for first contract bargainers, things like that. You may also want to check out the FMCS, the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service. They do have some resources online when it comes to, first contracts, when it comes to joint training sessions or mediation services. So, just a resource worth checking out. Spend a few minutes kind of diving through that website, looking at what's out there. And while you're online, I do want to also plug the ueunion.org. United Electrical has one of the most accessible democratic programs in the labor movement. Random jingle came through. I'm not sure if y'all heard that, but anyway, UE has very easy to read, practical articles on bargaining prep, drafting proposals, countering employer stall tactics. So ueunion.org. Now they are a very democratic, bottom-up kind of union. So depending on which international you're affiliated with, it may not totally jive with their process. But again, give you some good fundamentals. And same with EWOC, the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee. You can go to workerorganizing.org. Also, some great resources there that are worth checking out. But, just again, I want to congratulate you. I want to thank you for what you're doing on behalf of your coworkers. I know it's a lot of work. I know it's a lot of pressure, right? But it's really, really important. And it's pretty damn cool that you get to be at a table across from your bosses as equals, right? Like, not as subservient, but no, it's an equal playing field where, you're going to have a negotiation. Now, they're not going to act like you're equals, more than likely. That's not going to be their vibe from management, but it is a powerful thing. It is a very powerful thing, so don't take it lightly. And, the boss wants you to think it's a legalistic chess match. It's really not. It's a test of your organization and your willpower, right? Your power is not how clever you are as a bargaining committee. It's really, your power is in the solidarity of the workers that are involved, the workers standing behind you in your committee. So keep them organized, keep them informed, make the boss feel the heat every day that you don't reach a contract agreement, right? Every day that you haven't reached a tentative agreement, there should be some heat on management, and they should feel that heat escalate as this draws out and drags on, right? So those are just some things to prepare for, but definitely make sure that you are representing the best interest of your members, that you have asked what that is, and have some good sense of that, and know that at the table itself, you want to have a good poker face. You want to control yourself emotionally, be well regulated for these meetings because they can be intense. They can be high pressure. You're dealing with management, and you can't trust them. So that's a problem. And but if you have your workers standing behind you, if you really know what it is that you need and they need, you know how to make this a better workplace, and folks are organized and standing strong, you really can do it, and you can make people's lives like so much better. That's huge, right? That's huge. And so don't give up, stay strong, do your research, read up, be prepared, but you really can do this. And once you achieve a first contract, it will get easier. Not to say that, contract campaigns are always easy. Even in legacy facilities that have had unions for, 100 years, it can still be a tough fight. But once you get that first one done, you're setting the foundation. And you're not going to get everything right. You're going to get that first contract, and then you're going to realize, oh, crap, we should have, pursued better language in this section. Or, oh, this isn't really working so well. That's just the reality of it. It's not going to be perfect. But you are setting the floor. You are setting the foundation for what comes next. So you make sure you get those grievance procedures, those due process rights. Make as much ground as you can on the bread and butter of wages and benefits, but keep your members strong, because that's where your power really comes from.
Somebody in the chat said to read Rules to Win by Jane McAlevey. That's a really good one.
Oh, absolutely. And also Bill Berry, great labor educator out in Maryland, has quite a few books available, including through Labor's Bookstore. So he's got some great books about achieving a first contract specifically. So I would recommend that one as well. So just Google that, look into it. But yeah, appreciate you sharing that with us, and we love those kind of comments. So, if you've got anything going on in your local or in your neck of the woods, definitely reach out to us. We love to hear these reports.
Yep. So the National Association of Letter Carriers are going to have their convention next week. And there's lots of, a lot of
drama involved.
A lot of drama, people have been kind of following some of it on our program, but one of the big things is that following the convention is going to be the election for the national president, and there are lots of people who are running to unseat the current president, Brian Renfro, including Mike Cariff, who has been on this program. And I think my understanding of the way that this works is they have to be nominated at convention, and then you get on the ballot. And a big concern that I have heard from from reformers within the NALC is that there will be several, quote unquote, anti-Renfro candidates, and there are actually on the ballot, and there are multiple that are
that are announced, right?
That are announced, yeah. You've got Mike Cariff. You've got the Concerned Letter Carriers slate, led by current Vice President James Henry. And then I think that there is a third one. Labor Notes has a really good article about kind of the previewing everything going on in the union up to the convention, called Letter Carriers Set to Deliver Change in Upcoming Union Election. And so we'll see what happens at the convention. I'm sure we'll talk more about it next week. We might try to have somebody on from Build a Fighting NALC. But, it comes as the current contract has already expired. It expired back in May, so letter carriers are now working under an expired contract again, back where they were before they had this most recent contract imposed on them. And I think that's going to be a big thing in the election. And it also comes as the Postal Service's Office of the Inspector General put out a white paper with quote-unquote options for addressing the U.S. Postal Service's financial gap. And so this is coming from the Office of the Inspector General, not a political appointee or a management person. This is the OIG, and they are proposing multiple changes to the workforce, including quote, exploring modifications to collective bargaining rules, restructuring the Postal Service's workforce, and changing the Postal Service's workers' compensation rules. They want to do quote unquote benefits reform, adopting a new pension model. That never means, I'm sure Adam, that never means more money for pensioners. That means less. Amending the funding of new retirements, and some of the stuff that they wanted to do was to increase the non-career section of the workforce, to reduce headcount, and do everything to basically make this position a worse job, to kind of lower labor costs. But that's not going to be something that is that's going to help the Postal Service succeed as an enterprise.
No, that's further sabotage of a public institution to pave the way for further privatization.
I mean, and that's something that letter carriers have talked to us about ad nauseum, is how the retention rate is so low right now, because conditions are already terrible for the non-career staff, which is kind of where you start at for most letter carriers. You start as a non-career, and so it's so bad being a non-career person that they can't retain new employees, and so old employees have to do lots of overtime. And so if these recommendations were implemented, it would just make it worse to be a letter carrier, and make it more difficult for the Postal Service to succeed as an enterprise. So really, really terrible news out of the Office of the Inspector General going into the convention, and I'm sure that'll be a topic of conversation. But if you're a letter carrier going to convention or not going to convention, but you have some thoughts about it, we'd love to hear from you. 844-899-TVLR. You can leave us a voicemail or send us a text message. But it was really inspiring seeing the letter carriers get activated during the last contract campaign and voting down a bad contract. And I'm sure it felt really disheartening to see that basically that same contract imposed on the workers by arbitration. And so it's going to be a really I think it's going to be a really lively convention, and it's one that I really wish that I could that I could be there to witness it. But I do think that Mike Cariff said that he's going to be streaming huge portions of the convention. So if you want to go follow Mike Cariff and watch that stream, then you should be able to do that. Adam, there was some ACA news that you wanted to talk about. Is that right?
Yeah, let me pull up my notes real quick. Just wanted to give people a quick update because we've been covering this really for over a year now. We know that the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act was passed, July 4th last year. And there's a lot to that beyond just tax cuts for the rich. It also includes cuts to pretty vital services. One of those would be SNAP. So, for example, in Alabama, the state legislature is going to have to cough up about $175–200 million this next year just to maintain our current food stamp program, thanks to that legislation. But healthcare has really been a big piece of it because there have been cuts and changes to Medicaid. Medicaid expansion was targeted by this legislation. It's now more difficult for the handful of states that did not expand to do so. Those that have expanded are basically being punished for it. And one of the things that we've talked about a lot as well would be the ACA marketplace subsidies, right? So these really grew, especially during COVID, to try to make the Affordable Care Act marketplace insurance plans a little more affordable for folks. Those subsidies have expired, and according to a new article that was put out, Alabama Reflector published this, but I believe it's a national AP article or through State's Newsroom. But the headline is Obamacare enrollment declines in 49 states. Now, before I even get deeper, I'm just going to go ahead and guess that there were not 49 states in the country where those folks fell off the rolls of Obamacare and picked up better health care. Just my speculation. The lone exception was New Mexico, the only state that's used its own money to fully replace the expired aid. Interesting, which I was not aware of that. But we've seen a decline of about 3 million people being covered under the health insurance marketplace. But one of the things I wanted to mention is in Alabama, we've seen a almost 25% drop in coverage. Some states were even worse, like Oklahoma, 32%, South Carolina, 29%, Louisiana and Mississippi, 26%. So, pretty big drop in enrollment. And for those who are still on the marketplace, they're seeing their premiums increase significantly. In some cases, people are doubling, tripling their premiums. So there's a real problem there. And one of the other things that hasn't gotten a lot of attention is that the healthcare marketplace navigators were also cut in this. So Alabama used to have 20 some odd healthcare navigators, and these were the people you could call if you were trying to figure this system out, right? You ran into an issue, you were trying to get advice on the best plan for you and your family. Maybe you're new to the marketplace because you just lost your coverage somewhere else, right? And so the healthcare navigators were really important to help get people signed up and enrolled. That also contributes to this drop, right? Because they would kind of help people do this. And so in Alabama, we went from, like I said, about 20 to 4 individuals now. So, that's a pretty big slash there. So, a couple other things I wanted to mention. As I said earlier, it does make Medicaid expansion a lot more difficult. It's changed the way provider taxes work under Medicaid, these premium tax credits. So between the hospitals, the patients, the workers at the hospitals, like everybody is really feeling this. Everyone is really feeling this. And we're going to see a huge jump in the number of adults and probably children as well, but certainly adults who do not have health care. There are at least 150,000 adults who are stuck in Alabama's coverage gap, right? They make too much for Medicaid, but not enough to actually get health care. So we can pretty reasonably assume that there's going to be a much higher number as new statistics come out. So, bad news. I have never been a huge proponent of the ACA. I believe that, like, virtually every other industrialized country on earth, we should have a single-payer universal healthcare system. I think that would be better for the people. I think it would actually be better for most businesses, frankly. I think it would just be better for society. We would all save money. We would all be healthier. We would all have less stress. We would all be better off under such a system. Certainly devil's in the details. Some are better than others. But the ACA, for better or worse, is what we have. And I don't see how driving up healthcare costs, so much so that a lot of people are either really strapped to pay for it, or they're just simply dropping out of marketplace coverage. I talked to workers just this past week who were telling me, I always try to be really careful at work because I don't have health insurance. Mm-hmm. How crazy is that? Let me make sure I don't get in an accident. I hope no one runs me over with the forklift because, I've got no health care. That's insane. This is the richest country in the history of the world. We got folks out here with no health care, and we've got, about a dozen hospitals in Alabama that are at risk of closing because of this. And that's just in Alabama. This is nationwide. NNU, the National Nurses Union, has been going on a red alert tour of the country, exposing all this, exposing the different hospitals that are at risk of closure, which there again is a significant employer. Here in North Alabama, the Huntsville Healthcare Authority, Huntsville Hospital System, is the largest employer outside of the military base, Redstone Arsenal. We're talking about 20,000 employees, right? So in these rural areas, you already have healthcare deserts. You have people who are sick who die on the way to the hospital because they're miles and miles and miles away from available treatment. You've got counties that don't even have pediatricians or dentists in them. It's insane. So, that crossed my radar this week. And, like I said, I heard some of the specifics on Alabama's numbers, but also just the nationwide trends. And, it's an ongoing story. We're going to continue to hear about it. We're going to see more of the impact, I think, as the months go along. But it's really, really important that folks know who did this. This comes from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, right? Republicans in Congress passed this. They did this. So if your health care costs more, if you suddenly don't have health care anymore, if your hospital in your nearby county closes, right? Think carefully about who's really responsible.
We've got one more segment before we talk to the folks from the IBT. The UAW has been in a lot of controversy with their recent monitor. Over the last few years since Shawn Fain has been elected, the UAW has reestablished itself as a leader in the labor movement. I mean, when they were founded, they were pretty quickly the vanguard of the labor movement, the bleeding edge, fighting for the most progressive policies for workers and for the country, fighting for civil rights. And Shawn Fain is trying to do a very similar thing on both fronts, both fighting for some of the best, most progressive contracts within the union and leading the labor movement in social and political policy, fighting for Palestinian rights, fighting for a ceasefire. Now, most recently, the union voted to, at their convention, divest from Israeli war bonds. And
hey, let's not forget, they helped revive the demand for a reduced work week.
Yep. Yep.
which is something that we came close to achieving in the New Deal. It is a historic demand of the labor movement that, hey, as you have more technology, as productivity increases, maybe we could get some more of our time back. Maybe we could actually reduce the working week without reducing wages because we are so much more productive and there's really no need for it. So we can do that. And I appreciate that UAW has revived that, has brought it up both as part of their Big Three strike, but just put it back into the consciousness alongside the idea of coordinating around strike action. Right? May Day 2028 and the call to align contracts and to coordinate our power so that labor can be relevant again, because it really hasn't been relevant in our lifetimes.
Right. Absolutely. And, just like the leaders in the founding of the UAW, just like reformers in the history of the labor movement, Ron Carey in the Teamsters, his fighting for working class people has, made some folks upset. He has made himself some enemies, including the Monitor. The Federal Monitor was placed in an oversight role of the United Auto Workers because of the corruption of the previous administration. And let's remember exactly what the corruption was. The corruption was making backroom deals with management and selling out the members for perks for the union leadership. That's the type of corruption that this Monitor was placed in a position of power over this union to address. The Monitor was not placed in a position of power over the union to influence its political positions, to influence its staffing positions, or to influence who it elects and appoints as leaders. And yet that is what the Monitor seems to be doing right now. Labor on the Line has a really good breakdown of this on their YouTube channel. We're going to play part of it. You should go watch the full thing, Labor on the Line. You can find them on YouTube. But let's play some of clip 3.
Borofsky's job was supposed to be investigating corruption and enforcing the federal consent decree. Instead, his office has inserted itself into staffing decisions, political disputes, assignments made by elected officers, and now a contested election for UAW president. The conflict escalated after the UAW called for a ceasefire in Gaza. The night before Fain was scheduled to speak at a Capitol Hill ceasefire press conference, Borofsky called and urged him to reconsider. He claimed he was speaking personally, but a federal Monitor with a court-backed authority cannot simply take the authority off like a hat when he calls the president of the union he oversees. Borofsky later forwarded the union a complaint from the ADL, an organization that has been widely criticized for equating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, about a UAW local ceasefire position, even while acknowledging that it was outside of his jurisdiction. The UAW refused to back down. Delegates have since voted to divest the union's investments from Israeli bonds. Then, Borofsky dramatically expanded his scrutiny of Fain and other elected leaders. His latest report alleges that Fain retaliated against Vice President Rich Boyer after Boyer objected to Fain's proposal to give bonuses to workers at a job training center jointly run by UAW and Stellantis, a group that includes Fain's fiance.
Okay, I want to pause it right there because the framing that Labor on the Line did there is the correct framing. What you normally hear in the press is that Fain was upset at Boyer for not giving benefits to his fiance. Okay? That sounds like when you hear those words, what those words put in your head is, oh, Fain is asking for individual beneficial treatment for his fiance. What actually happened is there's a group of workers that Fain was fighting for, and his fiance happened to be among them. Right? Are we to believe that the only group of workers that Fain has fought for to receive bonuses or higher pay is this one group of workers that his fiance is a part of? No, of course not. You can look at his history. You can look at his track record. He has been fighting for better wages, better bonuses, better working conditions for all the workers in the UAW, not just units that include his fiance. And that has been one of the most frustrating things. That is one of the huge things that the Monitor is investigating Fain for. I mean, totally ridiculous. Let's continue.
Says Fain improperly removed Boyer from oversight of the Stellantis department. Fain denies it. He says Boyer was removed because he bargained concessions, failed to enforce the contract, and even tried to hire family members into union positions. Fain has called out Boyer for negotiating a strict and widely hated attendance policy, as well as failing to hold the company accountable to their commitments to reopen the Belvedere, Illinois plant. Now, Boyer is running against Fain for president.
I also want to mention really quick that it was not just Fain that removed Boyer and Margaret Mock, even though Shawn Fain had the right under the UAW's Constitution to do so. It's in the UAW's Constitution that he can remove duties from officers that are not within their constitutional duties, right? Rich Boyer, in addition to his elected offices, was appointed to be director of the Stellantis department within the UAW. He was not elected. That's not an elected position, director of Stellantis department. That's not elected, and it is the president's prerogative who he puts there. And he can remove people. But he didn't do that. Instead, he took it to a vote of the International Executive Board, and basically everybody except Mock and Boyer voted for those two to be removed. And so it was not just Fain, it was the whole executive board. Let's continue.
Allegations that have circulated for roughly 2 years was released just as the election got underway. That timing is hard to miss. Now, the Justice Department has initiated a grand jury investigation into matters described in the Monitor's report. No charges have been filed. The DOJ has not publicly commented, and the lawyer representing the UAW says the union itself is not the subject of the investigation. Yet.
So yeah, and as the person from Labor on the Line mentions, these are allegations that are allegations of actions from 2 years ago. 2 years ago, and they just so happen to come out weeks before the election. This Monitor's report. This Monitor's report, by the way, the monitorship, which the members of the UAW are paying for and have paid $25 million for over the last 2 or 3 years. $25 million for this oversight, and $25 million if these are things that should have been investigated, which is not something that I think I would be willing to grant. But if they are, you're telling me $25 million can't get an investigation that gets to the bottom of the facts with relation to allegations within 3 months, within 6 months, within a year? It takes 2 years to investigate this with $25 million worth of resources? I mean, that's totally ridiculous. And as the person in the clip mentioned, none of this investigation started. None of this, Fain talks about how he had a good relationship with the Monitor until the UAW took the position that they did on Israel and Palestine. There were no issues before that. And Borofsky is he just is a very big supporter of Israel over and against the Palestinians. And he thinks it's anti-Semitic to call what's going on in Israel and Palestine a genocide. He thinks that's anti-Semitic. And so, I think it's too much to say is it's too much to be a coincidence.
Right.
And Fain has been responding more forcefully, and he also even just to try to, get away from even the appearance of corruption, he said, okay, fine. I'll reinstate Mock. I'll reinstate Boyer. Like, I want to fight for the members, and I want to, I want to build a fighting union, and I want us to fight for our members. I don't want to be bogged down in this, internal union politics stuff. I just want to move forward, and that wasn't enough for the Monitor. So Fain has been responding more forcefully. They just had the presidential forum last week, the UAW's presidential forum for the elections that are coming up soon. So if you want to go, you can go to the Monitor's YouTube page and watch the forum. It was Shawn Fain and like 5 other candidates that are running to be president. I think that most people believe that his chief opponent is going to be Rich Boyer, and so we'll see what happens. But very, very concerning, very concerning stuff coming out of this Monitor, and I think that UAW members have a right to be upset about what's going on.
Yeah, and as you transition, I do want to just plug that President Fain put out an editorial on Newsweek this past week, really calling the question of whether Democrats are going to support working people or billionaires. And so I thought that was a good example of the kind of leadership that we're looking for in the labor movement, right? We need our leaders to be explicit about the political conditions we're facing and being willing to call out Democrats, Republicans, whoever it may be, call balls and strikes for working people and what's really working and not working for us. So I appreciate him doing that. I recommend folks check out the article. Again, it was on Newsweek. And I want to see more from labor leaders. I want to see others jumping in with this conversation. He's not the only one by any means, but, I appreciate that leadership. Absolutely. And, it is going to be, I think any sort of reform project of a institution of this size in history and everything else is going to be difficult, right? Like if you tried to reform a local with 100 members, it's going to be hard work and there's going to be some bumps in the road and there's probably going to be some missteps. So I would imagine, has everything been perfect to everyone's satisfaction? I'm sure it hasn't been. But this is a large institution in need of some real democratic reform and militancy. And I appreciate the spirit he's brought to this position and the leadership he's demonstrating for the rest of organized labor and really working people across the country.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Let's go to standby, and we'll bring in the guests from the IBT Staff Council. All right, folks, we are back. You're still listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. We have now in studio Matthew Ripley, the Secretary-Treasurer for the IBT Staff Council, the union for organizers with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. We also have Miguel Gonzalez, President of the IBT Staff Council. Miguel, Matt, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Thank you for having us.
Really appreciate y'all for taking the time, and I know this is difficult. And so, sort of because of that, I want to start with, talking about why you're an organizer and, the parts of the job that you like and you get that you get fulfillment out of. Because, I can imagine, and I'm sort of trying to preempt some criticism that y'all are just trying to destroy the union and you're like selfish and you only care about yourselves, et cetera, et cetera. But, most people, I don't know anybody that goes into organizing for like a cushy paycheck or a cushy job, right? And so can you talk a little bit, and we'll start with you, Matthew. Why did you become an organizer?
It's real simple. I've worked on both sides, right? So as I came out of the Army, and then after I got out of the Army, I looked for a career, so I got into trucking. So I didn't know anything about good trucking jobs or bad trucking jobs. I just got into what was available to me at the time. So it wound up being some non-union carriers, and then so I got lucky enough to be blessed to find a job that had a union contract. And then immediately I could see the difference. And the difference was you had a voice, and if something was wrong on the job, you had a way to fix it, And with non-union, it was never that way. So as I grew as a union member, I got more and more involved. And as doing that, I wanted to be a part of the solution to those problems that I seen up front. So that's the reason I started organizing. And I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to, and it's been nothing but a blessing to watch workers see their power grow. Matter of fact, when I went into, and I'm so thankful for my wife Whitney. We've been married over 22 years, and she's been nothing but a blessing to me. She allowed me to chase my dreams of trying to do more in the union, because we literally had to take almost a $30,000 pay cut for me to go from driving a truck under a union contract to going and working as a temporary field organizer for the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. So that's a great sacrifice that the family made, because it's something we live and believe. This ain't something we just chase for dollars and cents. It don't exist. Organizers can't do this job for more than a couple months if they do it for a paycheck. You got to do it for the love of the people and the love of the workers. That's the reason we do what we do, and I know that's the reason I do it, and I'm thankful that I'm allowed to do it, and I'm blessed that my family supports me.
Right. Miguel, what about you?
Yeah. First, thanks again for having me on. But I'm a second-generation Teamster, and my mother was the bookkeeper of Tampa, Florida, Local 79. So I literally grew up at the local, and very early on, I was just volunteering at the local and helping translate. That was, thank you to my grandparents that they forced me to learn Spanish. But that's how I got started, was just volunteering at the local, and I got picked up by the IBT very young as a field organizer, and I take a lot of pride in just helping educate workers and build their confidence, and help people fight for a better future and better benefits and more stable work environment. So that's how I got into it.
Yeah. And so, Miguel, we'll stay on you to talk about, like, why have staff unions? Because it can kind of sound funny to say, like, oh, the workers of a union have a union or need a union. But I think it makes sense if you think about it for a little bit, because, it makes sense that the workers for unions who would want to have the same rights that they're fighting for other workers to have. And workers at many other major unions already have staff unions, including workers at my national union, AFGE. I'm an AFGE member. I have been for the better part of a decade. And workers at our national union office, they are organized with the OPEIU. But the organizers at the IBT have not had a staff union. Why is that?
Well, there were several attempts in the past, two that I'm aware of that, got to an election and failed. Why I believe the IBT, doesn't have a staff union yet is probably because they rely strongly on their rank and file and field organizers. So field organizers can be seen as temps, perhaps, and certain rank and file members, I guess you could feel or say that they feel as if they have a contract because they came from a union barn, right? And a lot of those contracts have return rights. And a lot of times they do end up going back to their union barn. Just like Matt said, he had to take a substantial pay cut to come out here and organize. So really, it's like every other employer, they have all the control right now. We are at-will employees, and they know that the ones that are in this for the long haul, we are very passionate about our union beliefs. And, I feel like I was raised to do this and, grew up at the local, like I said, and my mother was a huge influence on that. Olga Gonzalez, she's the president of the Hispanic Caucus in Tampa, Florida. So, from a young age, I was just trying to help immigrant workers and stuff know their rights. And to go back to your original question, though, I believe we're so passionate about what we do that we've let that get in the way of having the same rights that we fight for other workers, right? We're out here convincing other workers to put their job on the line to form a union, and meanwhile we're at will ourselves, so I think it would be a huge advantage to be able to show a worker my own contracts. But
right,
that's my answer.
And so, Matt, I don't know if you have anything that you wanted to add to that, but what are some of the reasons that made y'all decide to pull the trigger and say now is the time to build a union for staff organizers at the IBT?
Well, it's always the same reasons. The reason organizers are successful because they get to work with workers that want to make change. And the reason these staff organizers decided to finally pull the trigger and organize was because of the same thing that every non-union employee deals with: favoritism, policies changing all the time, not having a voice on the work. That's the reason these staff organizers organize, because they get tired of being extended on rotation with very little input from themselves, being told that their vacation time can be denied at any time, not that having policies changed constantly. Those are the reasons, because these people, they love what they do. They want to help workers, but they want to have a voice. And to pretend that it's something wrong with having staff organizers to have union representation, to have a collective bargaining contract, it's just a bunch of bull crap. And it sucks that so many of the rank and file fall into that political stance that so many of these officers at our great union fall into. They act like there's something wrong with us for wanting what we fight for others for. But the truth is, stability is the reason people want a union. Right. Stability is why people want a contract, a voice, a legal protected, just cause. To be an at-will employee when you work for the strongest labor union in the country is shameful. We should not be at-will employees. That is the reason these staff organizers said enough is enough. It's time to do the right thing, organize. And they want, by the way, we never wanted to go public. Never at all. We did everything behind the scenes. We did it the right way. We sent a letter to Brother Sean O'Brien. We sent a letter to the organizing department, Brother Chris Roselle, letting them know we got the numbers. We want you to recognize us. We want to do it without a public election. Nope, ignored us. Didn't even recognize our letter. They did what employers at Amazon does. Amazon employers, will not recognize the workers when they give them a letter saying that we have the majority. We don't have to go to an election. Recognize us. They just ignore them, and that's exactly what our leadership did. And it kicked us in the stomach. It broke our heart.
So something that I'll hear from some people who, think that maybe there shouldn't be staff unions at unions, even though it's not very, like I said, most unions actually do have staff unions, especially for the international staff. The local staff is like the locals typically have such small staff that there's not a union. But, just to play, because I'm sure that you have to deal with this. And so just to play devil's advocate, what do you say to people when they say, well, look, being an organizer is not actually like a normal job, and it's not it by the nature of the work, it can't be stable. By the nature of the work, we need people who can be flexible. We need people who can work on campaigns, sometimes like 7 days a week or something like that, because like we're in a war right now. We're in class war against Amazon, and we need people who can be there basically all the time and devote your life to it. And that's, you kind of eat, sleep, breathe that. And, and if that's not something that you can do for an extended period of time, then you can go back to the shop floor and work. And, how do you respond to people who make those arguments?
Somebody that's making that argument doesn't know because they've never lived it. And these organizers, we do sleep, breathe, and live this stuff. And you said, organizers, people think we need to be available for 7 days a week. Yeah, that's amazing because we actually run 10-day schedules. Okay, so we're available all the time. Even when we're home, our phones still ring because it's about the work. It's about the workers. We don't stop working when we go home. So just to give everybody a little rundown of what our regular schedule is, we work 10 days on, 4 days off. Okay, so we usually go out of town. There's some people that get to work in their local area, but most organizers go out of town and then they're checked into a hotel for 9 nights. Okay, now anytime we have an election or extended strike line or anything, we run extra time. For instance, I had an organizer that just come off around a 16-day rotation because he had an election coming up. Me personally, I've been on 25-day rotations. I've been on 18-day rotations multiple times.
And when you say that 25, 18-day rotations, that means you're out of town for 25 days at a time.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what it means because that was the need of the campaign at the time. So these organizers make these changes and they adapt to this all the time. This is not once in a blue moon. This is pretty often. So within 1 year, you might have an organizer that gets extended 3 or 4 times. So instead of working a 10-day schedule, they may be working 14 to 18 days on a regular basis. A lot of times it depends on when our election dates fall in place. Because when we file for an election, we file and we give recommended dates, but the National Labor Relations Board is the one that sets the rules of the election.
Right.
So a lot of times that's the reason we extend, because that makes sense for the campaign. So we're very flexible and hardworking people, and we love workers. We just want a protected legal voice on the job. That's our main thing. We want to be just cause employees, not at will employees. That's what we're fighting for.
And then really quickly on the at will thing, I especially, I've heard this. I have been kind of surprised hearing this, but I've heard this from reformers, from people who supported Sean O'Brien or maybe Sean Fain, that look, just the nature of the game is that Sean O'Brien has a very different idea about how to organize than the previous administration. Sean Fain has a very different idea about how to organize than the previous administration, and they need to be able to quote unquote clean house and bring in people who are more aligned with that philosophy. And so it just makes it easier to run the union if you're able to bring people in who are kind of aligned with the administration's with the way that they want to kind of run the union. How do you respond to that?
For one, no one should ever lose their job because they don't agree with someone politically. Bottom line, I don't care what that is or who's running things. They should never lose their job because of the way they voted. Okay, votes are secretive for a reason. And by the way, I publicly supported Sean O'Brien, and I still support many of his ideas, but I definitely do not agree with him on this. We treat people right. And as a union steward, I've seen good employees be protected by a union contract when I worked as a steward. I worked hard to help those workers, just like our business agent does, okay? So we all know if you properly document an employee who's doing bad things and you properly do your job as management, you can walk an employee out the door because even under a union contract, because you done everything the right way. Okay. But you should never have the authority to wake up on the bad side of your pillow and just fire somebody just because you can. And that's what happens when you're an at-will employee. There's been people unfairly fired. There's been people unfairly suspended and unfairly treated because they did not have a legal way to protect themselves through a union contract and did not have a just cause standard that they should have as a union worker, period. If you work for the union, you work with the union, you should have the same rights as everybody you're fighting for.
And so, Miguel, what I'm hearing from Matt is that, like, organizers do work hard. We work long hours, we work for long periods of time, and we are flexible. And it doesn't sound like, and maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't sound like in the contract that y'all would be fighting for in your first contract that you would say that, no more ever, 10-day weeks or 14-day weeks or whatever. No more being flexible. It's got to be this way or the highway, or we're not going to be working on this campaign. What are some of the things that y'all are kind of concretely fighting for? Like, if you're able to get the first contract that you want, how does being a staff organizer at the IBT change?
So just cause language is huge, right? We are always talking about that on our social medias, and it's a game changer when an employee can get that. So obviously that is paramount. A grievance procedure, and arbitration. So these are all just pillars of every Teamster contract. So really, we're not trying to change the way we do the job. We've all got very accustomed to having to be dropped in somewhere, get familiar quickly, and at the same time, just as quickly, they could say, actually, we need you somewhere else. So I myself have been all over the country, even though I'm on the currently West Coast team. So, yes, we love our job and we will absolutely remain flexible. We want the basics of every Teamster contract in order to have those rights and protections that Matt mentioned, because it is a unusual job, but I would argue that for that same fact is the reason why we absolutely need a contract for those times where, when we're in GOTV and we're having to extend, things can get very stressful and taxing. Burnout is huge in what we do, so how would it look different? I believe that workers will be able to better manage all of that stress and have a way to defend themselves if and when they need to, and have those rights that we talk about on the daily.
And I think, the arguments that we make as unionists are that we make a few arguments, right, when we're saying that workers deserve a union in standard workplaces, like in an auto shop or at UPS or whatever. The one argument that we make is that just that workers deserve it, right? Workers deserve to have good wages, stability, just cause protections, et cetera, et cetera. But we generally also make a second argument, which is that workers who are paid well, who have enough rest, who feel secure in the idea that if I go to work and do an honest day's work, then I cannot be fired. I can't be fired, like you said, because the boss woke up on the wrong side of the bed. If I go in and do a good job, then I'm protected. We argue that workers in those conditions actually do better and are more productive, actually, for the company and do better for the company. And so you would imagine that I'm assuming that you're making similar arguments to the IBT, that, yes, we deserve it. We're workers as, employees for the IBT, but also we will be better organizers for the IBT if we are more secure and have more rest, and et cetera, et cetera. And so how has the IBT responded to your campaign, Matthew?
It's sad. It's mostly crickets. Okay, they have not openly responded. They wouldn't sit down with us. I personally reached out to Brother Sean O'Brien multiple times. Brother McGill's reached out to Sean several times. And when he does answer the phone, he's very cordial and acts like he's going to sit down and talk to us, and then at least have a off the record conversation just to talk about why we feel the way we do, and he acts like he's open to that. But then when it comes to setting a day and getting a time, it doesn't happen. So it's very sad that he doesn't respond. And it's not just that. You want to talk about the stressfuls of the job. I mean, for instance, right now there is no structure, so you can be hired in as a field organizer, and you don't know if you're going to be. You can be the best field organizer out there, and you don't know if it's going to take you a year to get promoted or if it's going to take you 4 years to get promoted. I give a prime example. We just lost a great field organizer in the southern region, who, when she was leaving, straight up told me that she's been here for well over a year. She's never got the opportunity to be a staff organizer. She made it known to her regional organizing coordinator, her direct supervisor, that she wants to make staff. She wants to grow with the organization, right? Mm-hmm. Well, what happened was they used just cause, or status quo. The boss literally told her that since we, the staff organizers, filed for union representation, that they could not hire anyone. Brother Chris Roselle has said that publicly multiple times in front of organizers, that we can't hire any new lead organizers and we can't hire any staff organizers because of status quo, because we got to work everything out with the joint or the staff council first, which is a bunch of garbage. We both know as unionists that status quo means everything continues to operate as normal. So therefore,
and presumably people could be hired.
Absolutely, they're supposed to be hired. That's what status quo says is, because when back on February the 17th, when they counted the vote count, there was 65 organizers on the voter list, right? Mm-hmm. So status quo would say that there should still be 65 active staff organizers right now, and we're well below that, okay? Mm-hmm. And there's been no one promoted as a lead organizer since we won our union election back in February, and there's been no staff organizers hired. So, for instance, that sister I was referring to, she was part of 6 victories just recently. Wow. Okay? She's a great organizer, and she's going to be a great organizer, and she's going to be a staff organizer immediately in a smaller union in Texas, and she's going to do a great job there. But we should not lose people because they're using and leveraging our own right to organize against us. Wow. We should never lose someone for that kind of crap. And that's how the IBTs responded. But just do like every other employer. Blame it on the workers that want to organize. Any problem that we have, well, if it wasn't for that staff council, we could work with you. But right now, we can't really make any changes. We can't make any hires. We can't make any improvements, which we both know is a bunch of garbage. But that's the way they responded to us.
Miguel, they've also, if I'm remembering right, they've also called into question your ability to be members of the Teamsters. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that was a rather devastating blow they dealt us. As we've been mentioning this whole time, we all love being Teamsters. We all love the rich history and background, and so the threat of losing membership really shook the organizers to their core. That's the whole reason why we developed our independent union, because people, that was one of the reasons why the previous elections failed. People did not want to be members of another union. So we created the staff council and had, great success with everyone being super supportive and wanting to get involved. Then we got a email from Chris Roselle letting us know that we are no longer in good standing and could no longer be members. Although that boiled down to being a jurisdiction of the local. So the local gets to decide who is a dues-paying member and who is not. So some people did actually lose their membership. but a lot of locals actually kept us on the roster, and I myself am still in good standing as we speak. So, but yeah, they did that, and it is heartbreaking to see them stoop to that level of union busting. So.
And, you know, I mean, you were mentioning status quo earlier, like, oh, we're in status quo, so we can't hire new people. Well, status quo was you could be members of the Teamsters, and basically everybody was, because they came out of the Teamsters. You're hiring Teamsters, and so they're staying Teamsters as they're organizing for the Teamsters. But, I mean, it seems like totally, you know, when it helps us, we're going to pretend status quo is this one thing that hurts you, and then when it hurts us, we're going to do this thing that's very clearly not status quo that also hurts you.
Yeah. So that letter was produced on March the 17th, okay? And remember, our vote count was on February the 17th. So a month later, they put out a letter, and it was an opinion letter by Attorney Feinberg, okay? So outside counsel. So we already have IBT counsel on staff. So instead of using our own, Brother Sean O'Brien chose to hire outside counsel out of Boston, of course, and then and Feinberg gave the opinion, and then, it may have been a different attorney, but either way, a couple of attorneys gave their opinion and put it in a letter saying that based on a small clause in the IBT Constitution, that we could not be represented by another union and still be a member in good standing. Now remember, this is an opinion letter. We all know no changes can be done until bargaining, all right? So then shortly after that, just like McGill mentioned, Brother Chris Roselle, he sent out a email to every local union, and then he CC'd the organizer and every local union principal officer, saying that in their opinion, that since the IBT staff organizers decided to organize, they're no longer members in good standing. For one, that's a violation of our own Constitution. It's very clear in our Constitution. If you're going to say anyone's not in good standing who's been paying their union dues, you got to bring charges up against that member, and you got to have due process. We were not given due process whatsoever. And then
locals just stopped taking your money.
Well, or some did, because the IBT is advising them not to.
Right.
So, for instance, in my own deal, that happened to me. As soon as I got the letter, I was offended. I was more than offended. I was, quite frankly, really, really ticked off, because I'm a proud Teamster. I'm a very proud Teamster. I've been a Teamster member for over 12 years, and I live and breathe and die this stuff, because I love what we do as an organization. We help working people every day. So that's who I am. That's who we are. So when you tell me I'm no longer in good standing because my staff organizer stood up, and by the way, I never even signed a membership out with the staff council until I received that letter. So I want to thank Mr. Chris Roselle and everybody else who lit a fire under my butt to stand with my brothers and sisters, because that letter done something to me. It struck at me at the core and let me know exactly what we were up against. We're not up against just a organization. We're up against a boss. Okay, Sean O'Brien's been a great leader in many ways, but when it comes to this situation, when it comes to these workers, because we are workers, and when it comes to these workers, he's a boss. He is a straight up boss. And just like a brother of mine wrote for Teamster Mobilize, Brother Caleb Keel wrote a great article with Teamster Mobilize, and he compared Sean O'Brien to Jeff Bezos. Okay, at the time I thought it was kind of funny. And I thought Jeff Bezos and Sean O'Brien's nothing alike. But when you look at these two things, how when workers stand up to organize, how they become the boss, and they want to make sure that they do everything they can to keep their workers from getting the just cause language, yeah, that is very similar. And it's offensive. Is what it is.
And ironically, Sean O'Brien has, to his credit, been fighting very hard and is notching up some wins. I think ultimately he's not going to be successful, but he's fighting very hard for the Faster Labor Contracts Act. It has passed the House. And that would, just as a reminder for people, so that you know what it would do, it says that you have to, after workers win a union, you must start bargaining within 10 days of a union's request to bargain. You have to go into mediation if no deal is reached within 90 days. And it goes into mandatory arbitration after 120 to 130 days, and y'all voted for your union back in February.
Correct.
So we are, I mean, the Teamsters, as Sean O'Brien, I mean, and this is all happening as he's notching up wins for the Faster Labor Contracts Act. The Teamsters would be very much in violation of this law that they're fighting for.
That's right. If this law passed tomorrow, it would be doing us a favor, because it would mean they would have to sit down. And I personally support the law.
I think it's a good law.
Great.
I mean, the whole labor movement supports it. It's a good law. I mean, bosses should have to negotiate with their workers when they decide to organize.
Absolutely. So since we won, since the vote count, it's been 165 days. Since we were certified in February the 25th. So it's been 157 days since our election was certified. And yeah, how about that for a faster labor contract? We could use one right now.
Miguel, Matthew said that there have been some workers who have been not been promoted or not been hired. The IBT is kind of hiding behind status quo. Have any organizers been retaliated against for participating in the union campaign in other ways?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, our brother Caleb was one of those. He was forced to resign. We had another sister that had a similar situation to Caleb that basically was forced to resign as well, without giving out too much of their, personal story and stuff. But absolutely, I mean, I myself have been retaliated against and filed a ULP against it. So my story with that was my wife had some surgery that was scheduled. It was not emergency surgery. She needed to get some hernias fixed. So I was not planning on being with her through that. I foolishly was thinking, but because my wife told me that she had it covered and, my mother-in-law was going to come and not to take any time off. So at this point, I'm working from home on a campaign here in Colorado. So, but the night before the surgery, she gets a bit scared, and it's her first real surgery.
Yeah.
And I tell her, no problem, I'll call my boss and see, if I can take a personal day or if I can take some sick time. So that's exactly what I did. I called my coordinator to explain to him the situation. He advised me to reach out to HR. I spoke to HR, which asked for documentation of the surgery, which I provided immediately, and advised me that I had the okay to take sick time due to the medical procedure. So I went ahead and did that, submitted it, and very next day, I get written up for not giving enough notice on taking a sick day. Now, I do believe that if I would have woken up and just told them that, hey, I'm stuck on the toilet and I can't go to work, they would have just said okay, and that would have been the end of it. I'm not aware of any policy that says I have to have, such and such notice before I use a sick time. But to further that, they actually went ahead and changed policy days later, stating that if you were to take any personal time or sick time for a spouse or loved one, that you would need to take or give, I believe it was 14 days notice. So, 2 ULPs that I filed, one on retaliation, which I included the another violation of status quo, and then, we also filed another one for diluting the unit, which Matt touched on already because they haven't promoted anyone. To add to that, it was a Hoffa administration, but my first go around with the Teamsters was back in 2008 to 2012. I myself put in 4 years as a field organizer. And then at the end of that, they tell me that, sorry, there are no staff positions available, and laid me off. So obviously, many years later, I'm back now as a staff organizer, but I did work as a rep for AFSCME for some time. But yeah, that is just, stop the hypocrisy. We eat, live, and breathe Teamster organizing, and just like Matt said earlier too, really doesn't matter how passionate and how hard you work. My first go around, they said jump, I asked how high,
Right.
Constantly extending, because at that time I was a single guy. Now I'm married with 2 kids, and my priorities are a little different. But yeah, the retaliation is very real. I do feel like there's a pretty big target on my back right now, but I don't care. I'm going to do this for all the reasons that I was raised to believe in.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned feeling like you've got a target on your back. I mean, I think that the big, sort of like an elephant in the room is that y'all are in, coming on this program, presumably, and talking about this openly, presumably creates a lot of risk for you. It's difficult for me to understand the way that, like, normal bosses, why normal employers fight unions so hard, but in this case it is particularly, when we're talking about unions fighting their workers organizing, it's so difficult for me to understand, but especially at this point because you've already voted to unionize, so the union is there, and so why not go? And it doesn't sound to me like you're asking for anything crazy. It sounds primarily like you want just cause and a grievance procedure and things like that, and those are some of the key things, which is just cause and grievance procedure is some of the most like banal it's literally one of the first things that you negotiate in a union contract, and so it's so difficult for me to understand why the IBT would try to bust this union up instead of just saying like, okay, well, let's negotiate the contract and get on with the work of building the Teamsters.
Absolutely. The sad part is they don't even know what we're asking for because they refuse to sit down with us. If they would just sit down with us and have a regular conversation, they would find this is something we can knock out in a couple of days. And it's not like they don't already work with a union. The organizing department overall is the largest department with the Teamsters Union, okay? Mm-hmm. Chris Roselle is the director of the organizing department. He has many employees. So in that building, in the organizing department, he has many positions. They have administrators, they have a Salesforce team, a data team. They have multiple employees. All those employees that work in that building work under a union contract. They are represented by the OPIU. So the thing is, we would use similar language for the grievance procedure on them. We personally, the ones that started this drive a while back, they particularly went with the staff council role because they want to remain. Everybody wants to remain Teamsters, okay? Mm-hmm. So what they want to do, they're using a model from the UAW that's been out there since the 60s. Right. They created the UAW staff council, I believe, in the 60s. And it's real clear. We want to keep paying union dues to the IBT, and we want a small portion of those dues to go towards arbitration when needed. We know it's going to be rare, but if they would just sit down and have a regular conversation with us and start negotiating the way they're supposed to, they would find out none of this had to be public. This could have been resolved within a short amount of time, and we're not looking for any pie in the sky. We're not looking for anything other than what we fight for others. We want a just cause standard. That's what we want. And we want to have a voice on future changes. We should not be froze out. Our vacation was froze out in the month of June. Why? Because we had our own convention was happening in the month of June. And guess who couldn't go? The IBT staff organizers. We were not allowed to take any vacation, and simply because they didn't want us to go. Now, they would never openly say they wanted to make sure we didn't have a demonstration there, but we all know with common sense that's exactly what they were fighting against. They were afraid of that. So they're afraid of their workers standing up in solidarity. And that's what we're doing as staff organizers. We're standing up in solidarity, and this fight's for the field organizers also. They're not part of the bargaining unit, but we want to have a clear path for them to step into being a staff organizer once they've been with the organization. Because right now there is no real pathway for someone to be promoted or not. It's done by favoritism. It is. And then, I'm not saying that any bad organizers are being promoted, because there's a bunch of good organizers that were previously promoted. What I mean by that is there is no straight standard. It doesn't say if you've been with IBT as a field organizer for 1 year or 3 years, you're guaranteed a spot to get promoted. None of that language exists. And we do want to have written path to help those field organizers come into a staff as an international organizer, to become a staff organizer.
Before we get to, what people can do to help, is there anything else about, the formation of the staff council, the IBT's response, or anything else that y'all want to make sure that we get to?
Well, I think there's a few things that's important. For one, we want everyone to put pressure for our leadership to do the right thing. I mean, Sean, if you hear this interview, if you see this ain't a personal attack. You didn't create this problem. The organizing department was created a long time ago under this situation as a at-will employees, okay? This should have been solved years ago, but it wasn't. But now we have to deal with the leadership who can solve this. And this can be solved with an agreement real simple with Brother Sean O'Brien and the leadership at the IBT. So we need everyone that has his ear, everyone that has a voice that agrees with us, that wants to see workers get treated right and have a just cause standard. Please put the right kind of pressure on our leadership to sit down and have a real discussion with us. I mean, that's all. This is all it takes. That's in my opinion, that's the most important thing. McGill, did you have something you wanted to highlight, brother?
Yeah, I just want to reach out to all the rank and file brothers and sisters out there. And, again, we all love being Teamsters, and we're not trying to give the organization a black eye by any means. And to be able to share in the same rights and privileges that our brothers and sisters already have, So I will second Matt on everything that he said. We need everyone to help expand our voice and make it known. We, the organizers, are fighting to strengthen and build this union, need a contract ourselves.
That's right. And then, like, if everybody, we all know when we got something that we want to see a politician pass, we reach out to them, and we would love people that feel the way we do to do the same thing. We would love for you to reach out to the IBT, leave a voicemail, leave a message, and letting the IBT know, negotiate with your staff organizers. And that phone number for the IBT office is 202-624-6800, 202-624-6800. If you'll call that number and leave a message and let them know the way you feel, that would be very helpful. And if you want to shoot Sean O'Brien an email, please do. The first 3 letters in his email is SOB. It's SOBRIEN@teamster.org. So that's his email. So if you can email and phone call and let them know how you feel, that would be very helpful. We need to live the things that we preach. We really do. We preach it, we need to live it, and we believe this stuff. All these values should match. And that's all we're asking. We have other things out there that we share with you through email that we would love people to help us with. Because, fighting, trying to do something like this is not easy. It's not cheap. We have a great attorney, and one day we're going to have a big bill that we got to pay her. Right now, she's been great at working with us, but we know them bills are coming. So we have a way we have a fundraiser for that. If people can contribute to that, that would be very helpful. And we'll gladly share those things with y'all. But we really, really appreciate everybody's support and love that they give us. But we definitely need our leadership to sit down and do the right thing.
All right. Brother Matthew, Brother Miguel, really appreciate your time. Is there anything else you want to leave us with before we let you go?
McGill, you got anything, brother?
We're also developing Teamster shirts and stuff like that, which we'll be sending over to the labor report so they can make sure to share that with their audience. But thank you again for all your time, Jacob, and to help expand our voice and our efforts here. So, when Teamsters fight, Teamsters win.
Yeah, and I would like to touch on something that, if y'all don't mind, I'll be real quick about it. Brother O'Brien's bragged ever since he took office in 2022 that we've organized over 100,000 workers, which we have. And who did that work? Organizers. So I want to thank all the great organizers. Right here in the South, we've organized over 40,000 workers in that same time frame. I mean, I got an organizer, a staff organizer that's part of the staff council. That organizer is amazing. There was a local union here in the South that was took over as trusteeship for many different reasons, and their internal membership was just awful, just absolutely awful. And that organizers went in there and within a year organized over 1,185 people just in that one local union. And that's amazing, by the way. Now that local union just got out of trusteeship and it is thriving. They just elected their new leadership, and that local union's doing great. And a big part of that is the organizing work done by that staff organizer. And let's talk about this. One of our biggest employers out there, which is very publicly, is UPS. UPS has got a ton of hubs in all of these right-to-work states. And we all know you can work under a union contract in a right-to-work state and not be a union member. We've had 2 organizers on that campaign within the last year, in this year of 2026, and they've already organized over 2,000 workers right here in right-to-work states at one employer. I'm going to tell you, we're doing the work. The staff organizers doing the work. I got an organizer that just came off another great victory for the first concrete victory in the state of Georgia in over 25 years. I mean, we're constantly organizing, and I'm so thankful for this show, for all the victories that y'all highlight. And there's so many victories that we do behind the scenes that aren't public. Anytime we get neutrality agreements. So, for instance, we've just had some organizers in the South do a great job and organize for the John Ossoff team. That was not public because it was not an NLRB election.
Right.
And same thing for the Democratic Party of Georgia. We also organized those workers recently. We just had a victory right here around Atlanta for fuel drivers. I mean, we've had a ton of victories. I mean, we're organizing at a tremendous rate because of the hard work of these staff and field organizers. And we're very proud of the work we've done. And we don't take that 100,000 workers that we've organized lightly. And we're not going to slow down. We're going to keep thriving. We're going to keep striving, and we're going to keep working for the workers. All we're doing is asking our leadership to look at us as the workers we are and give us the same respect that we give everybody else. And we're so honored and thankful that y'all are helping us highlight this, and we hate that it has to come to a public. But at this point, we're asking the public for help because we've reached out privately and we've heard crickets. And now we're wanting to put pressure where pressure belongs because respect is in a Teamster union contract, and that's all we're after is respect.
Matthew Rupley is Secretary-Treasurer of the IBT Staff Council. Miguel Gonzalez, President of the Staff Council. Thank y'all both for your time.
Thank you.
That's going to be it for our show this week, folks. Appreciate everybody tuning in. TVLR.fm is the website. You can subscribe to the newsletters there, and we'll see you next week.